these sides, because outside of the increasing savings rate, as we saw in the German case, there are other side effects to negative interest rates. For instance, the pressure is borne more by the core countries, as in the Netherlands, Germany, and France, where banks have huge amount of excess reserves. At the same time, you've got Italian and Spanish banks, which are actually benefiting from negative interest rates. So what the ECB did recently was announce tiering so as to absorb the pressure from the core countries' banks. So that policy can, the ECB can tweak that policy a bit more. But I guess the more important point here is that negative interest rates have sort of worked more in combination with QE because it helped push the euro down by making European making European debt securities less attractive. But at this point in time, that sort of channel will not really work because the bar for the euro to move lower is quite high. So we do not really expect negative interest rates to boost the currency and hence boost European competitiveness. So the side effects are increasing in spite of the effects of ECB measures such as TLTROs and tiering. But why do we have negative interest rates? It's because the other measures are lacking. So unless and until we see progress on fiscal stimulus or more concessions on QE in terms of capital key constraints, the central bank's hands are tied.
Exactly. I was talking. I asked Richard Jones.
The roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets.
We
dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath.
But he says, they have no other choice because there's no help coming on the fiscal side, or not enough help coming on the fiscal side. It's been great having. It's always great having you. So I really appreciate you coming in for radio, as well as Bloomberg Television earlier. Shweta Singh is Managing Director for Global Macro and EU Economics at TS Lombard.
Thanks very much to Shweta. Now for the latest in global news, here's Bloomberg's Roger Hearing.
Thanks, Hannah. China's President Xi Jinping has backed Hong Kong's embattled leader Carrie Lam after 5 months of protests that have caused major problems in the city. Bloomberg's Jason Scott has all the details.
During a face-to-face meeting in Shanghai, Xi told Lam that she had led the Hong Kong government in stabilising the situation and had worked hard to quell the unrest, according to reports from China's official Xinhua news agency. Xi told Lam that he demanded efforts to stop and punish violent activities in accordance with the law to safeguard the well-being of the general public in Hong Kong. In Canberra, Jason Scott, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Here in the UK, Lindsay Hoyle says he's going to bring a new style to the House of Commons after being elected its new Speaker. He was deputy to the previous man in the chair, John Burko. The Labour MP won the 4th round of voting by lawmakers last night. He takes over immediately and insists Parliament will see a change for the better.
Rules and procedures apply. Feels that there's something not quite right. My door's so always going to be open. I want to make the changes for the future. Because I realise this House has become tarnished in the public image. I want to ensure that the public have faith in democracy again, and I think that will come.
In the US, President Trump's formally begun the process of withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. The move was announced back in 2017 and will take another year to complete. This sets the stage for the US departure from the deal on November the 4th next year, the day after the 2020 presidential election. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is
Loads of brilliant phone.
Roger, thanks very much. Still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe 2 shows. Fiat deal is great news for some investors. We'll speak to opinion columnist Marcus Ashworth as he makes the case now is not a bad time. This is Bloomberg.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75
Twitter, and
years,
Instagram for the latest and greatest audio on the app.
Explore exclusive content.
Can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires. Which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimming. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
No company wants to be involved in an international dispute. But when disagreements arise, you need expertise at your side. Take a closer look at ICDR, the International Center for Dispute Resolution. Backed by the longevity and strength of the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of cross-border dispute resolution services, handling more cases than any other institution. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit AARP.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Rishad Salamat.
As companies see true value in ESG, they will have to work harder in using it as a dashboard rather than a method to inform stakeholders. Joining us now from Singapore is Robert Rubinstein, a TBLI Group founding partner and chairman. Tell us what impacting investing is, first of all.
It's trying to achieve a market rate return as well as this measurable social and environmental added value.
So, investment which takes place, which actually just changed things in society here as well. And how much evidence is there that you get more bang for your buck as a shareholder seeking returns from this type of investing?
Verizon announced that it would give away Disney Plus.
Well, I mean, if you look at, we've been doing educating asset owners and managers about ESG and impact investing for 25 years, and over those 25 years, there's been hundreds, literally thousands of reports showing that at worst there, or at worst there's no underperformance, and at best there's an outperformance. But the issue is more about, not about proof, it's about belief. If people believe that it's not going to work, then they will believe that. So that's been more the challenge, more the educational side, because the proof is clearly there, but if you don't want to believe it, then it's not going to happen.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
They may see the value in
markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So European equities are flat to slightly negative this morning. That's despite the bullish market that we saw yesterday, the Dow Jones climbing to the first all-time high since July, and the S&P 500 and NASDAQ indexes also reaching records yesterday. That positivity certainly was felt in Asia, with gains for the Nikkei, for example, up 1.7% this morning, gains for the Shanghai Shenzhen Comp, the CSI 300 in China, and the MSCI Asia Pacific altogether up 0.9%. But as I say, here in Europe, that doesn't seem to have translated. In terms of the sectors, the worst performing telecoms, real estate and construction at the bottom of the heap right now. As for US futures, looking ahead to the market open, we're up 0.2% for S&P 500 and Dow Jones futures. And as for the fixed income space, 1.82%. So a gain in US yields continuing to rise, 4.6 basis points higher, in fact. And we gain in terms of European yields, negative 31 basis points, up 3.5 basis points for benchmark German yields. This also as we had the RBA, they kept their cash rate unchanged overnight. We had some comments from Haruhiko Kuroda talking about governments needing to intervene, particularly the Japanese government needing
to basically stimulus and spend more money. So that was interesting from Kuroda this morning. That is a look at the markets, your Bloomberg Business Flash. Now is Roger Herring with all the latest in global news. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Anti-government protests are continuing in the Chilean capital, Santiago. Police using water cannon and tear gas to disperse large crowds. At least 20 people have died in the protests, which started last month after the government announced a hike in subway fares. The movement quickly expanded to protest frustration over education, health services and growing economic inequality. Air pollution in New Delhi remains near record levels, forcing the government to close schools and advise people to stay indoors. The air quality index spiked as high as 858 in some parts of the capital after rising above 1,000 at the weekend. Readings of 50 are considered safe, with anything over 300 seen as hazardous to health. And work less, make more. This dream came true at Microsoft Japan, which allowed staff a 4-day work week in August, after which its store sales per employee increased 40% compared to a year earlier. In addition to skipping Fridays, the company shortened meetings to a maximum of 30 minutes and encouraged online chats over face-to-face ones. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Herring. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 9:20 in the City. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined this morning by opinion columnist Marcus Ashworth, who's been writing about bondholders and how they might take a different view of the Peugeot Fiat deal from their equity counterparts. Marcus, very good morning to you. So Peugeot's shareholders didn't perhaps think much of what they saw in the takeover of Italy's Fiat Chrysler, but bondholders see it a little differently. Why is that?
It's called European Central Bank. Lord bless them. They're backed by QE. And look, our Bloomberg Intelligence reckon that it may be 2.5 billion per month spent on corporate bonds out of a total of 20 billion. I actually think it'll be closer to 4 billion. I.e. 20%, which is roughly around where majority of the time the corporate QE was running alongside regular government bond buying was around 20%, so I think that's more likely to be. And certainly when you think of how negative rates are across yields across most of the German, French curves, what have you, it probably makes more sense for the ECB to buy corporate bonds with at least some yield. They're all investment grade they look at. And this is we found Peugeot and now Fiat have finally at long last come up into investment grade. They only require one out of the four main rating agencies, and Fitch rates Fiat already investment grade. Moody's are looking at it as well. So and Peugeot's there already across all four. So they don't own any of Fiat or Peugeot. They got absolutely stacks of Volkswagen, BMW, Daimler, Benz, etc. So it makes sense. The only slightly strange thing here on this merger is it's all share. There's no debt being used to raise it. They have no need to raise any bonds. But that makes it even more attractive in some senses for your existing bondholder. You've got a big buyer and you've got no new debt coming on board. So that's the reason why spreads have tightened substantially for Fiat.
I wonder about the business. You know, I was having brunch with some millennials on Saturday. Although,
did you have to pay?
Yes. Well, of course, I picked up the tab because I'm old. But also, they thought it would be a good idea to have brunch at 3 p.m., which to me is
that's
more
a millennial thing, man.
Dinner. But they were saying, I never would invest in automakers. That's the main industry I would short. You know, we're all going to be borrowing or sharing cars, and also they all want to drive electric cars, which it's a huge investment that Peugeot and Fiat are far behind on. Don't these two laggards have just too much spend in front of them?
Possibly, but the point is that's exactly why they're teaming up. So you've got Fiat Chrysler, you've got Peugeot, Opel, a whole bunch of other different names. These guys are all having to club together because the future spend, and it may not be electric, it could be hydrogen. We still don't quite know where this is going to break as far as replacement cars for
for the combustion engine. We certainly know diesel has got a finite lifespan in most city centres, and this is going to knock on. But a bit like the oil industry, this is going to be around for quite a long while. And these are very big companies, and they're more important their state and national champions. And I think for a bond investor who's looking, maybe a 5 to 10 year horizon, this is pretty safe stuff. And I think that's reason why it doesn't yield desperately much. I won't get too excited here, but it's probably fine. And really, where else do you go for yield at the moment? We've seen this across the last year or two, is that people scramble anything which is a well-known household name, which is offering some form of yield.
Okay, Marcus, thank you very much. Yeah, fascinating that not only does this perhaps improve the balance sheet of these two specific firms, but it also puts them on the radar for a new buyer as well in the form of the ECB. Thank you very much, Bloomberg Opinion columnist Marcus Ashworth. You can read more on this and other stories from Bloomberg Opinion at bloomberg.com/opinion and on the terminal by typing OPIN GO.
All right, speaking of oil investments, when we come back, we'll talk about one of the banks leading the IPO for Aramco, the biggest oil producer in the world. This is Bloomberg.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr. The NBA has agreed to a multi-year deal making DraftKings an official sports betting operator. Boston-based company joins a half dozen others, including MGM and longtime daily fantasy sports rival FanDuel, with deals that allow them the rights to official betting data and NBA logos. Last year, the U.S. Supreme Court tossed out a law that, in effect, prohibited sports gambling in most states. The league says it will work with DraftKings to protect the integrity of NBA games. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar Series have been sold to Penske Entertainment in a stunning announcement that relinquishes control of the iconic speedway from the Holman family after 74 years. Tony Holman bought the dilapidated speedway in 1945 after a 4-year hiatus following World War II. Also part of the deal, the speedway spun off multiple other subsidiaries. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr.
Bloomberg is excited to convene the Year Ahead Summit on November 7th in New York City. Speakers include Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg, award-winning actor, producer, and businesswoman Sarah Jessica Parker, TPG co-CEO Jim Coulter, and CVS Health CEO Larry Merlo. Supporting sponsors Pfizer, Workday, Hennessy Paradis Imperial. Participating sponsor Invesco QQQ. Learn more at BloombergLive.com/TYA. Register with code RADIO.
Something remarkable happens when just the right elements come together. Ideas with technology, data with inspiration, investors with solutions. This is what Invesco does every day, because they believe the possibilities of life and investing are greater when we come together. Invesco. Let's invest in greater possibilities together. To learn more, visit Invesco.com/together. Invesco Distributors Incorporated.
Why has...
It's another Tuesday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal blue sea. Fly from London Gatwick to the Maldives with British Airways from £300 each way based on a return fare. The British winter and book by November the 12th at BA.com. British Airways from London with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways.
London,
with flights
switch to
Hotel
Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited.
Don't miss out.
Because the best
Book by November the
deserve the
12th
best
at
network and our new
BA.com/winter
unlimited data
with British
plan.
Airways.
The future is
Incredible
exciting.
is within
Ready?
reach.
Vodafone.
Booking fees and
Max
conditions may
download
apply.
speeds apply
Limited
to unlimited
availability.
data. Best
Selected
network
flights
is
in
voted by
March.
readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my family gave me Now TV, there's no more endlessly searching for something they want to watch. Because now I don't do filler TV, just killer TV. If my family wants football, how about the Premier League? Documentaries, I've got ones about space, sharks, or superstars. Or how about dramas? I've got Emmy-winning shows. Oh, I know, so fancy. Now Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV.
£199 per month. Customer deposit of £9,701 when financed through Access.
This is the sound of festive fun in London.
£12,525.
You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 for a Merry Christmas. Or £450 off for existing home care customers. And now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Conditions apply. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get
NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can hear every NFL game live as it's happening. Or catch it later on demand. Anytime, anywhere. All season long.
Reminding you that all of your
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social
Broadcasting
media
live
to
to
discover
London on
the latest
CAD
and greatest
Digital
in
Radio,
live sports.
to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, to Bloomberg Business App and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak
On Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most.
Good morning from the German capital of Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Anna Edwards. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. We get some data breaking in just now from the UK, so let's get to that. UK October Services PMI rising to 50. The estimate was 49.7, so it's not a great big outperformance versus the estimate, but it is back over 50, and of course that maybe psychologically that helps. 50 is the dividing line between growth and contraction when it comes to these PMI numbers. So UK services kind of stagnating amid persistent Brexit uncertainty, but at least a little bit better than had been anticipated. That follows on from construction numbers yesterday that looked to be pretty weak. So that's the UK story. Just checking in on the pound. Any significant movement on that data? Not really. We see 128.84, a fairly flat pound versus the dollar at this stage of the trading day. We'll keep an eye on that. In terms of the other data we need to check, and we check the data every 15 minutes here on Bloomberg Radio, we've got stocks in Europe, broadly speaking, pretty flat. We have the IBEX is actually down by 0.3%, but elsewhere we see some moves to the upside. The FTSE 100 up by 0.4%. The Xetra DAX stronger by just 0.1%. The IBEX story, we saw some wind power business in Spain coming under pressure in the early part of the trading day, and so that's part of the narrative over in Spain. Looking more broadly though, US futures are pointing more positive, and in fact increasingly positive as we go through the session here in Europe. So a stubbornly flat European picture, but we've got US futures pointing higher by between 2 and 0.3% this hour. Oil prices are a little firmer this morning, 56.85 on WTI. The US 10-year yield also firmer as we see money going out of the perceived safe haven of government debt and more into risk assets. So 182.47 is where we trade for the US 10-year yield. The dollar is fairly flat right now. We see money in keeping with that risk-on move that we saw in Asia. We see money coming out of the yen. So the yen is down by 0.3%. That's really the big move in the FX markets. Matt?
All right, so interesting to see the levels we are and the movement or lack of movement on equity indexes now that we have so much trade optimism. It has fueled a market rally up until now. White House officials are weighing a decision to remove some tariffs on Chinese imports. That's the latest line from Bloomberg News. Meanwhile, China is reviewing locations in the U.S. to sign the first phase of a trade deal, according to sources. If you ask Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon, there is reason to be optimistic, and I did just that here in Berlin. We discussed the latest developments in U.S.-China trade tensions.
If you're watching what's coming out of the administration in Washington, if you're listening to what's coming out of China, I think it feels like both are incentivized to have some sort of a phase one deal. So there looks like there's some progress and some moving forward. I think the issues are complicated, and there'll be a lot more to talk about, but I'm relatively optimistic based on the data points. I'm watching them just as you are. It feels like we're going to have something instructive happen.
How much damage do you think has been done, though, and can that be reversed? Can the economy be salvaged from trade?
Well, first of all, the global economy is still growing and it's chugging along. I think the trajectory of growth has slowed over the course of the last 12 months. But what the trade tension has done is the trade tension has acted as a headwind to growth. And so if you remove that headwind, that should be a positive for the momentum and growth of the economy in the short term.
It's not the only uncertainty, obviously, facing investors. Well, in the U.S., I think it's more and more the political situation has been uncertain. The Democrats are moving towards an impeachment. You've got some very progressive candidates on the Democrat side for 2020. How much of a concern is, first of all, impeachment for you? For businesses in the U.S.
Look, I think that process, the process of impeachment and how it plays out, to the degree that there was an impeachment hearing and the President of the United States was removed from office, that would obviously be a very, very significant event. I don't see that as something that's likely. So at the moment, I think we're in a political process where there's a lot of discussion about this. I think the bigger thing that markets are focused on is not the impeachment process in the U.S., but more what's happening in the election. And I think it's very early to really predict and call, but we're watching the election like everybody else, and it's going to be an interesting process in the next 6 to 9 months as the candidates take shape, and we see what I think will be a pretty interesting election in the United States.
Still a lot of uncertainty, and I think I recall when you came into the job, you were looking at maybe a 15% chance of recession. Recently, you said it's getting closer to 25. What do you think about the possibility of a U.S. recession?
You're making a science out of something that I'm trying to give a sense of. So you're quoting me correctly. When asked recently, I've said that I still think the chance of a U.S. recession between now and the election is small. In the distribution of outcomes, it's a smaller outcome. I said roughly 25%. If we had talked about it 9 months ago, I probably would have told you it was very small, kind of 15%. So I do think the uncertainty has increased a little bit some of the risk, but I still think when you look at the economic data, when you look at the earnings momentum, we've seen 4 to 5% earnings growth in the U.S. as we're watching the earnings reports. Consumer's still very healthy. I don't see anything that indicates the consumer is weakening. There's no question the industrial, the manufacturing part of the economy is slower, but when you look at the whole package, I think the chance of a recession in the near term is not significant.
So that was the Goldman Sachs CEO, David Solomon, speaking exclusively to me here in Berlin. Always great, Anna, when the CEO of Goldman Sachs stops by our German capital, and to get a chance to talk to him about some stuff was cool. You didn't want to talk too much about Aramco specifically. They're one of the lead banks on the IPO.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sort of open client relationship, isn't it? So we didn't want to go too in detail there, but you did push him on valuations of tech startups, which I thought was a really interesting conversation worth digging out if you have access to that, because that was really interesting. He fought back against this idea that it's difficult to value them, said it is always possible. Let's get the global news now. Here's Bloomberg's Roger Hare.
Thanks, Anna. To Hong Kong, and China's president is backing the leadership of the chief executive, Carrie Lam. That's despite 5 months of pro-democracy protests that have caused many problems in the city. President Xi says ending violence and restoring order remain the most important tasks in the city. Lam remains in the job after denying reports that Beijing planned to remove her. The EU is closing in on an accord that would allow the US government and American companies to participate in joint defense projects. Bloomberg's Nikos Chrysolaras says it could remove a source of friction in transatlantic ties.
The accord, due to be discussed by EU ambassadors in Brussels on Wednesday, also paves the way for closer military cooperation between the EU and the UK post-Brexit, while at the same time it closes the door to countries with non-democratic systems, such as China, to such cooperation. Brussels, Nikos Chrysolaras, Bloomberg Daybreak, Europe.
In the US, President Trump has formally begun the process of withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. The move was announced back in 2017, and it'll take another year to complete. This sets the stage for the US departure from the deal on November the 4th next year, the day after the 2020 presidential election. Here in the UK, Labour MP Lindsay Hoyle has been elected Speaker of the House of Commons. As Bloomberg's Thomas Penny reports, he's promised to heal divisions over Brexit and hasn't revealed his own stance on the matter.
Battle-weary MPs backed Hoyle, who promised to be neutral, transparent and independent
as he gives up his political affiliation to chair meetings of Parliament. And if no one party wins a majority in the December 12th election, all eyes will be on Hoyle to set the tone as lawmakers squabble over the UK's departure from the EU. In London, Thomas Penny, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing, and this is Bloomberg. Anna.
Thanks very much for that, Roger. Now with your morning sports news, here's Lawrence Mora.
Liverpool and Chelsea can take giant steps towards qualifying for the Champions League last 16 tonight. Despite opening group stage defeats, both are now in strong positions. Liverpool faced a Belgians Genk at Anfield, and despite a huge Premier League clash with Manchester City coming up on Sunday, manager Jurgen Klopp says his players know how to focus.
We have to create an incredible atmosphere again. We have to make life as uncomfortable as possible for a game. We have to make sure that we get these 3 points, because that's all why we're doing all this stuff.
Chelsea host Ajax, who they beat 1-0 in Amsterdam when they last met in Group H, but manager Frank Lampard is warning his side against complacency.
At this level, if you don't, you're not going to get the results. So it's very much a case of not getting away from ourselves in this group and getting the wins to hopefully get us through.
West Brom are back on top of the Championship this morning. They've been struggling Stoke 2-0 last night with goals from Matt Phillips and Hal Robson-Kanu.
Let's get the U.S. sports now. For that, we go to Pete Fox. Pete?
Monday Night Football at MetLife. It was all Cowboys in the second half, which included 21 in the fourth to beat the Giants 37-18. New York has now dropped 5 in a row. On the hardwood, the Warriors get their first home win, beating the Trailblazers 127-118 at the Chase Center. Eric Paschal had 34 and 13. The Nets down the Pelicans at Barclays 135-125. Another big night for Kyrie Irving, 39 and 9. And the Wizards, their first win on their home floor, 115-99 over the Pistons. Troy Brown Jr. with 14 and 10. I'm Pete Fox, that's your Bloomberg NBC Sports Update.
Thanks very much for that, Pete. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, John Normand, head of cross-asset fundamental strategy at JP Morgan, joins us next with US equities continuing to hit new record highs. I've seen conflicting research on whether this is a good time to pile into risk assets or not. We'll talk about that with John and plenty more. This is Bloomberg.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
As Ben Franklin said, taxes are one of the certainties of life. Tax reform and the Wayfair decision have brought opportunities, surprises, and challenges to corporate taxpayers. New and complex regulations such as GILTI and FDII mean intercompany transactions, transfer pricing, and business combinations need to be reevaluated. Companies also face additional state sales and income tax exposure. What worked in the past may not work today. EisnerAmper can help. That's a certainty. Visit EisnerAmper.com/tax certainty.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
You know where to find us. It's another Tuesday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and relax with 365 beautiful beaches.
That target base when
Fly from London Gatwick to Antigua with British Airways from £223 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March. So ditch the British winter and chase
Teaching
the sun
shapes
across the
lives.
globe with British
Becoming a teacher
Airways
means
from
a
London
career of
Gatwick. Reach
opportunities.
the top
You
of
could head a
Mount
subject
Teedy
department
or
or work
relax
towards
on a
school
sandy
leadership.
beach.
And with a minimum starting salary of
Fly from
£24,000 to
London Gatwick to
£30,000,
Tenerife
teaching has
with
never
British
been so
Airways.
rewarding.
With flights
Teaching.
and 7 nights
Every
hotel
lesson
from just
shapes a life. Search Get
£349
Into
per
Teaching.
person.
Starting
Don't
salary
miss out.
dependent on
Book by
location.
November the
London,
12th at
switch to Vodafone, the UK's best
with
mobile
British
network,
Airways.
and be
Incredible
unlimited
is
because the
within
best
reach.
phones
Booking
deserve the
fees and
best
conditions may
network
apply.
and
Limited
our new
availability.
unlimited
Selected
data
flights in
plan.
March.
The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data.
Let me just
Best
get my
network
card.
is voted by readers of trusted
in my
reviews. Terms at
pocket.
vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
You can't control awkward first dates.
No,
But if you
next
temporarily
bus is
misplace your
18
debit
minutes
card, you
away.
can freeze
Look,
and
there's a cab.
unfreeze it
We
all
really
on
should.
mobile banking.
Taxi!
Feeling
We ate out
control
last
every
night.
day.
Just get in. We're getting so. You're such a bad
You can only have some
influence.
transaction You types, can't T's and always C's control apply. what you
Hey,
spend.
it's me
but you
again,
can save
the
as you spend
TV.
with
Since my
saved
family gave me
change.
Now
When you
TV,
use your Lloyds
there's no
Bank
more
debit card,
endlessly
you'll round
searching
up
for
the amount
something
for
they
the
want to
next
watch.
pound
Because
and
now I
transfer
don't
the
do
difference
filler
to your nominated
TV,
Lloyds
just
Bank
killer
savings
TV.
account.
If my
Feeling
family want
controlled every
horrors,
day with
no
our mobile
problem.
banking
It's
app.
not real, it's not
Lloyds
real, it's not
Bank,
real.
by
Or
your
crime
side.
dramas,
T's and C's
I've
apply.
got loads.
Far wing, elevate, triple
Or
bucket.
how about
War of
dramas?
the crowd.
I've got all the big
The shot
shows from
clock
Sky
ticks
Atlantic.
down.
Now they
Will
can watch
football
whatever
go
they're in the
in?
mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. Miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it. Sideline the man. Tune In Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now,
Get rewarded for
hear it
staying active with things
on
like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with you.
Search NBA today. Start listening.
10%.
Some days life can get in the way of catching up on the news that moves your world.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health.
Tune in is here to help with live 24/7 coverage from CNN wherever you go.
This
on
is
the
the sound
TuneIn
of
app,
festive
you can
fun in
always
London.
find a slice of your schedule,
You want to
however
keep your
long,
savings
to
for the
check in
things
on
you
the
love
biggest
this
stories
Christmas,
of the
not a
day.
new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas.
Search
You'll get a
CNN
5-year
on
British
TuneIn
gas
to get
warranty,
the live
and now we
news
can quote
when
by
it
video
matters
call
most.
evenings or weekends.
College
Get a quote by
football
the
is
30th of
live on
November
TuneIn.
and get £150
Listen for
off the
free
new
to
boiler,
games from
or
more than
£450
140
off for
schools
existing
all
home
season
tax
long.
So British Gas new boilers.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Adam Grant, and this is Work Life, my podcast with Ted.
Study how to make work not suck.
And it's defined like this.
Blackout is a suspense-filled thriller from Endeavor Audio and Q2.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
We see the trend on mopeds, and actually more important.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And here from Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So a few news lines. President Xi Jinping stressing China's commitment to global trading in his speech in Shanghai, and also the PMI figures that came out for the UK, the dominant services sector flatlining in October. The PMI comes in at 50 on the nose. And in terms of the markets this morning, that positivity that we saw from the possibility of a trade deal between the US and China seems to have lost its momentum, certainly here in Europe. The US stock 600 is flat right now. The FTSE 100 Bloomberg, though, gaining 0.3%, and the Zetcha DAX just up a notch, up almost 0.1%. The big decliner in terms of individual stocks is Pandora, down 11.4%. We were speaking to the CEO just earlier this morning, 6 to 8 weeks into their turnaround plan, their new stock that they've been bringing out, not well liked by investors, it seems. And in terms of the fixed income markets, 1.82% for US benchmark yield, so up 4 basis points. German Bund yields at negative 31 basis points, also higher 3 basis points. Spanish yield, though, in the middle of the election wrangling, 32 basis points, also higher 1.5 basis points there. In terms of the FX space, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is weaker at 0.1%, so continuing that greenback softness. The pound trades at 128.88 and the euro at 1.1129. Of course, after we had the ECB's Christine Lagarde give her first speech last night as ECB president. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Roger with all the global news. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. India has decided against joining a trade agreement covering much of Asia. It paves the way for the 15 other countries to sign the China-backed deal next year. India says it has significant issues with the deal, which is called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. For the first time in 5 years, the UK's terror level threat has been lowered from severe to substantial. It means the chances of an attack have gone from quite highly likely to likely. Home Secretary Priti Patel says the public should remain vigilant and report any concerns to the police. Now remember the 5th of November, that's on this day in history. A plan to blow up London's Houses of Parliament was foiled in 1605. A group of Catholics had planted 36 barrels of gunpowder under the building, hoping to kill the Protestant King James I. Guy Fawkes was found guarding the explosives and was executed. People still burn effigies of Guy Fawkes and set off fireworks to remember the gunpowder, treason and plot even today. Global News 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is Bloomberg Matt.
It's my favorite holiday, Guy Fawkes Day.
We don't get a holiday there, do we? No time off, Matt. We just
no, I don't mean like a bank holiday. I just mean it's my favorite day of celebration. You know, remember the 5th of November.
It's got a kind of dark backstory, but yes, I can see what you mean.
Coming up next, our colleagues in the U.S. are getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's check in with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you got?
Well, we are looking at risk on once again. Markets poised for yet more records on this Guy Fawkes Day, with the U.S. and China seeming to edge yet closer to a Phase 1 trade deal. The mood music certainly seems to be taking hold on markets this morning. We're going to hear more from our conversation with Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon about where things stand in the U.S.-China trade story. And we'll bring in Pamir Gordon, chief economist Simon French, on where he thinks the discussions are headed and what a Phase 1 deal could mean for headwinds for the global economy. Plus, we will be watching shares of Uber in the pre-market after mixed earnings from the ride-hailing company that wants to be more than a ride-hailing company. We'll break down those numbers with Mandeep Singh of Bloomberg Intelligence as Karen Moscow and I get set for Bloomberg Daybreak on this 5th of November.
Like Google. All right, very much looking forward to it. Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow up next on Bloomberg Daybreak. If you're listening on Sirius XM, channel 119, you can get them there, or really anywhere in the world, frankly, on your Bloomberg.com, on your mobile device, on your home PC, I guess, if you still want to use one of those. If you're cruising around London in your Lamborghini Countach, and you've upgraded your stereo system to like a new digital headset, then you can hear Bloomberg Surveillance instead on London DAB. I always see so many Lamborghinis. You know what's weird? I see so many Lamborghinis and Ferraris in London, which also...
I was just going to say, that speaks volumes about the bits of London you visit.
But it seems to me it's so strange because it's also the city with the worst traffic in the developed world. So why does everybody need to be driving, these Aventadors up and down the King's Road? I don't get it.
They don't need to, but it's probably fun. Now, US equities, I'm sure the team in the US on Daybreak America will be picking up on the fact that US equities hit fresh records this week, with the Dow, the S&P 500 and NASDAQ all touching new highs. And according to our next next guest. The recovery in global growth, improving trade rhetoric and central bank easing could push the S&P 500 to 3,200 sooner than expected. For more, let's bring in John Norman, head of cross-asset fundamental strategy at JP Morgan. So good morning to you, John. I've seen some people saying we've seen a big rally, it's risk on from here, keep pushing equities higher, and others saying risk assets have run too far, time to sell. I guess you're in the former camp there.
I am. I don't think they've gone too far when you judge them relative to what markets typically do at a turning point in the business cycle. When the global economy bottoms, usually that's followed by at least 3 quarters of improving growth, and that's also accompanied by gains in stock prices of about 2%. So you've seen some of that already, but you haven't seen the fullness of what markets can deliver if the global economy could be stepping up to trend again.
So what does the global economy need? I mean, clearly it's not going to get a full-on trade deal, but all central banks are super accommodative. People are starting to talk about more fiscal spending. I mean, what does the global economy need right now to unleash the animal spirits?
I don't think it needs any more than the absence of headlines around geopolitics and time, because there has been a good amount of central bank easing in the background, both in terms of how many basis points lower rates are than a year ago, and also how broadly how many countries have eased policy, and it's certainly on par with what we've seen in the past in terms of how much monetary easing is necessary to deliver that bottom in growth and return to trend. So I think enough has been done to get you that trend expansion. I think the big question is what you're alluding to in terms of animal spirits. Animal spirits to me is what really gets a capex cycle going and extends that initial turn in growth into something above trend that goes on for a couple of years. I think you actually need a lot more clarity on policy, meaning will tariffs be rolled back, and if so, by how much? And also who will be the next U.S. president. There's a lot of domestic policy risk in the U.S. that could get crystallized in the next couple of quarters, and that's a constraint on the capex expansion. It doesn't prevent the short-term move that we're seeing now, but I think if you want to talk about this persisting throughout 2020, you really need a lot more clarity for the corporate sector.
And so you haven't seen enough. So when you look at the earnings season so far, John, you haven't seen enough confidence from executives around that capital expenditure story. From what you're saying, you see a short-term boost, but the longer-term story then needs what from the US on trade. It needs actual rollback of some of the tariffs that are in place right now.
Exactly. I think you need rollback on tariffs, and you need to start to form a kind of constructive view on how U.S. 2020 elections might turn out. That could mean a divided government under a Republican or a Democrat. It could be a return of Trump to the White House, but with no interest on aggressing China any further. So there are some possible paths that would make the corporate sector more confident in the outlook. It's just that we won't get any clarity on this, I think, for quite a while. So I feel like this is a short-term move, but it's still got a little bit left in it.
What do you think about Europe, John? I mean, we've seen big rallies year to date, but we're not looking at indexes that are up to all-time highs like in the U.S., and the earnings picture hasn't been as great either. Plus, even though Wilbur Ross said maybe the U.S. doesn't need to put tariffs on cars, you still got that threat of a U.S.-Europe trade war looming over these businesses.
You do. I think Europe has been uniquely handicapped over the past year by 3 issues. One was Brexit, the other was the trade war, and the third was a number of dislocations in German industry. So if you think all of these are going to fade simultaneously over the next 6 months, then you could get a more impressive recovery in European growth relative to any other economy, at least in the G10. I tend to think that a number of these uncertainties are going to persist. The trade war is really a blow against globalization, and no economy has been better a success from globalization as Germany has been. So I think there are some long-term questions around what's the path of German growth in a world that's less globalized. The Brexit issue is far from resolved. The withdrawal agreement has not been passed yet, but as importantly, the UK has not started that process of negotiating the future arrangement with Europe. So I feel like there are going to be a number of persistent concerns about Europe, which make trend probably the best the region can achieve.
person.
Just briefly, John, we talked earlier on, or Matt talked earlier on to David Solomon of Goldman Sachs, and he was critical of negative interest rates in Europe and suggested they hold back European growth. Just briefly, are they going to remain, though, part of the story for Europe, some of the support package that Europe has?
Switch to Vodafone.
I think so. I think in the view of the ECB and other central banks that have experimented with negative interest rates, their perspective on this is that maybe growth didn't accelerate, but growth might have actually been worse had they not moved rates into negative territory. So as long as they had that mindset that this was better than nothing, and the alternative could have been deflation, zero nominal GDP growth, I think they'll stick with these.
Right. Yeah, Matt, the second guest in this hour talking about, you just don't know the counterfactual. John, thank you very much. John Norman, head of cross-asset fundamental strategy at JP Morgan.
All right, up next, it's Bloomberg Surveillance. If you're listening on London DAB, if you're listening on Sirius XM in New York, good morning. Bloomberg Daybreak is up next.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com
with British Airways from London Gatwick and relax with 365 beautiful
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites
by
tab.
November the
Pretty easy,
12th
right?
at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hear every home and away game live or on demand
Volvo
everywhere you go.
0%
Just search
APR
NBA to
finance
listen.
on a Volvo Select approved
Here's a
used
swing
car.
and a drive deep to
Which
right
means
field. Looking
this
up.
weekend,
Goodbye,
0%
baseball.
Between
of
game-winning
your morning
shots and
run
walk-off
playlist
homers,
will be
follow
listened to.
TuneIn on social
So
media to
visit your
discover the
local
latest
Volvo
and
retailer
greatest in
this
live
weekend
sports.
and drive
The
home
24th
a
pick
car
in the
with
2019
0% APR
NFL
finance.
Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
50% minimum deposit on minimum finance amount of £7,000.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
18 plus. Guarantee
Hi,
may
this
be
is Brian
required.
Weber, host of
Volvo
NFL
Car
First and Goal
Financial
every
Services.
Sunday.
Control capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Of every scoring play around the NFL.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures gain as Beijing and Washington move closer to a trade deal.
We're so close. China wants to make a deal so badly.
China's currency strengthens, stocks in Asia climb, and havens slide.
Plus, the outlook for OPEC darkens as demand for oil declines.
More transcripts of testimony will be released today by House impeachment panels. Plus, it's Election Day. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Monday Night Football at MetLife saw the Cowboys pull away and the Giants to a fifth-straight loss. A win for the Nets, a loss for the Rangers.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 991 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 1061 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
We'll bring you all those comments and then OPEC slashing its outlook.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Daybreak, brought to you by Inovalon, a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare for insurance companies, physicians, pharmacy, and pharmaceutical companies. Inovalon, data has a story to tell. Inovalon gives it a voice.
And U.S. futures are gaining this morning. 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 7.5 points. Dow futures up 76. NASDAQ futures up 26. The DAX in Germany is up about 0.2%. CAC in Paris up 0.1%, and the FTSE 100 up 0.4%. Nikkei 225 in Japan jumped to 1.8%. Hang Seng in Hong Kong up 0.5%. 10-year Treasury down 12/30 seconds, yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.6% or 36 cents at $56.90 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.3% or $4.30 at $15.0686
he announced. The euro 1.1129 against the dollar, the yen 108.85. Nathan.
Karen, it is all about trade this morning as we see more signs the U.S. and China could be closer to a deal.
We're so close. China wants to make a deal so badly.
President Trump touted the negotiations at a rally in Kentucky. Meanwhile, China is asking the White House to roll back some tariffs as part of a Phase 1 agreement. Sources say Beijing wants rollbacks on as much as $360 billion of Chinese goods. Here with more is Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Shanghai.
They said if you want to get a full deal, a comprehensive deal, all of those tariffs will need to be removed. And if you want to get to Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, then they have hinted, particularly in state media, that they want to see at least some of those tariffs rolled back. So now we're hearing, of course, that maybe the US is considering lifting the tariffs that were imposed on September the 1st on about $110 billion worth of Chinese goods. Tariffs that were valued at about 15%, by the way. Now, the debate, of course, continues within D.C., but maybe that is the price that the US is willing to pay in order to get President Xi to the US to sign off on the Phase 1 part of the deal, because, of course, we've heard that Chinese officials are considering that, and that the states of Iowa, Alaska, and Hawaii are in play in terms of potential locations.
Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie reports that while China is asking for a rollback on tariffs, there is no word yet on a decision from the White House. China's currency strengthened past $7 per dollar on the news, the first time it's reached that level since August.
Meanwhile, President Xi Jinping is touting the global trading order and open economies at a keynote speech in China. We get the details from Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
President Xi says China will generate more imports and will cut tariffs further. He told the China International Import Expo China would open its doors wider. This expo is designed to show that China is shifting its economy toward consumption by buying more foreign goods. This was China again positioning itself as a champion of the global trading order at a time when the U.S. is backing away. As a colleague put it, the coded message here is look what we have to offer. Why would you risk it? In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thank you. And the head of Goldman Sachs likes what he's hearing on trade negotiations. CEO David Solomon weighed in on the progress in an interview with Bloomberg from Berlin.
If you're watching what's coming out of the administration in Washington, if you're listening to what's coming out of China, I think it feels like both are incentivized to have some sort of a Phase 1 deal. So that it looks like there's some progress and some moving forward. I think the issues are complicated, and there'll be a lot more to talk about, but I'm relatively optimistic. It feels like we're going to have something constructive happen.
Goldman Sachs stock has taken a hit since trade tensions ramped up in April of last year. It's down 12% in that time, compared to a gain of 16% for the S&P 500.
The talk on trade gave a boost to equities in Asia overnight. Bloomberg's Rashad Salamat joins us from Hong Kong with details. Good morning, Rashad.
Good morning, Karen. Asian stocks pushing higher. Chinese equities, including those in Hong Kong, getting a boost from the central bank. The PBOC reduced the cost of one-year funds to banks for the first time since 2016. Real standout, there was Tokyo. Japanese stocks playing catch-up after Monday's public holiday. Also, the improved mood around trade is touching the fractious relationship between Japan and South Korea. We've got both leaderships there agreeing to calm things down. The Nikkei 225 ending the session 1.75% to the upside. In Hong Kong, I'm Rashad Salamat, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Rich, thank you. OPEC is out with its annual world oil report, and it paints a grim picture for the group. OPEC projects demand for its oil declining and its share of world markets shrinking as U.S. shale continues flooding the market. We get more from Bloomberg's Stuart Wallace in London.
There's been no sign from within OPEC's own research that we're about to hit a turnaround in the global economy and suddenly everything's looking rosy again. So they're looking at exactly the same numbers as everyone else. And I think they're coming to exactly the same conclusions as most people in most asset classes. It's going to be a troubling time ahead the next year or so.
Oil reversed earlier losses on that report. Right now, Brent crude is trading at $62.71 a barrel, a gain of 0.9%.
Turning to earnings now, Uber Technologies is out with results that fell flat with investors. The ride-hailing company beat estimates for revenue, but posted a lackluster gains in bookings and monthly active users. That has shares down 6% in early trading. Mandeep Singh covers Uber for Bloomberg Intelligence.
I don't know if investors are going to want to sell at this price simply because the fundamentals seem to be improving. There seem to be an inflection when it comes to profitability, but the sentiment is really negative.
And Uber stock could see more pressure tomorrow when a lockup for some shareholders expires.
Now today we get the first set of earnings from Peloton following its IPO in September. Here with more, Bloomberg's Larry Komsky.
Bloomberg Intelligence says Peloton's long-term growth prospects hinge on building its customer base, which currently consists of more than 500,000 subscribers. It's done well selling subscriptions attached to its fitness hardware, but high costs could weigh on near-term profitability. Peloton generates most of its revenues from the sale of upscale exercise bikes and treadmills. In New York, I'm Larry Komsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thank you. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues.
You can see that we're seeing better.
All right, Karen, thank you very much. It is 5:07 on Wall Street. That's time to check the latest world and national headlines with Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Transcripts from the depositions of two diplomats dealing with U.S. relations with Ukraine are expected to be released today in the House impeachment inquiry. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff says transcripts come from the former special envoy for Ukraine, Kurt Volker, and U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland.
Republicans were present for all of these depositions, and in fact, they had equal opportunity, Democrats, to ask questions, and you'll see they took full advantage of those opportunities to ask questions.
It's Election Day, and the nation is looking at 4 key states that could give some insight on next year's presidential elections. President Trump traveled to Kentucky for a rally in Louisville. Other states being watched are Mississippi, Virginia, and New Jersey. One issue on the ballot in Jersey City includes curbing short-term rentals like Airbnb. Assembly seats are also up for grabs in New Jersey and New York. Voters in Queens will choose a new district attorney to replace long-serving district attorney Richard Brown, who died in May. In New York City, Police Commissioner James O'Neill is stepping down after 3 years in the position to head to the private sector.
This is the right time for me.
We'd want to see some
revisions higher. I have to move forward. NYPD has to move forward, and I know they're going to do it.
O'Neill said the criticism he faced from some in law enforcement for firing the officer implicated in the Eric Garner chokehold death was not a motivating factor. Dermot Shea takes over at the end of the month. Opening statements could come as soon as today as President Trump's confidant Roger Stone goes on trial for lying to Congress, obstruction, and witness tampering. Bloomberg's Bob Moon has previewed.
Did the longtime Republican operative keep the Trump campaign informed on what stolen documents WikiLeaks had and when they'd be released? Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen told Congress earlier this year that he was in Trump's office when Trump put Stone on his speakerphone with WikiLeaks news.
There would be a massive dump of emails that would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. Mr. Trump responded to the effect. Wouldn't that be great?
Stone infamously predicted in an August 2016 tweet that it would soon be Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's, quote, time in the barrel. 6 weeks before, WikiLeaks published Podesta documents. Early this year, Podesta said Stone is headed for prison.
Maybe with the Seldor clanks, he'll feel a little bit more remorse.
Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Global News 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, David.
All right, Michael, thank you. 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashow.
Nathan, fifth straight loss for the Giants, sixth in a row against the Cowboys. Dallas, who inexplicably lost to the Jets a few weeks ago at MetLife, returned, beat Big Blue 37-18. This game was closer than that. Dallas led by just a point going to the fourth quarter, but then pulled away. Red zone problems for the Giants, 4 times settled for field goals. Your quarterback is Daniel Jones.
We started better than we had, but we still missed a couple opportunities for touchdowns. When we had the ball down there, I think that was costly for us, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to lose, but we got to make sure that we learn from it and improve. And I think that's what we'll do this week.
Jones had a fumble and an interception while Dak Prescott threw for 3 TDs, and Zeke Elliott outrushed Saquon Barkley 139-28. Sunday at MetLife, Giants and Jets, 2 teams with a combined record of 3-14. At Barclays, the Nets outscored the Pelicans 135-125. Kyrie Irving continues to pour in the points. He had 39. He's averaging 32 a game, second in the NBA. Brandon Ingram had 40. For New Orleans. Golden State won for the first time in its new arena. At the Garden, Rangers never in this one lost to Ottawa 6-2. At Citi Field, 42-year-old Carlos Beltran introduced new manager of the Mets.
But in my mind,
a little bit
I've got to
tell you about our
by this
beautiful city break
opportunity.
in Bath.
But at the same
Midweek is
time, I'm excited.
time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a
Looking
half by
forward
train
to
from London. It was
manage
so
this ball club.
relaxing.
Looking
We
forward
headed
to
straight
continue to
Bath
establish
Christmas market.
relationships
I can
in this
still
city.
smell the
I
roasted
just can't
chestnuts and
wait
mulled wine from the
to
chalets. Then it
rewrite
was time
our
for glow in
story.
the dark mini golf. I got a
Being the
hole in
manager of the
one.
new Met.
Well,
22nd manager in team history, the ninth
There's
that
so
also
much to
played.
do in Bath. I'm already
Bloomberg
planning my
NBC
next
Sports
trip.
Update. I'm John
Discover the magic
All right, John, thanks. In other sports news, looks like Wall Street's running up the score when it comes to sports betting. Morgan Stanley predicts the U.S. market will generate almost $7 billion in annual revenue within 5 years, about 8 times what it generated this year, $2 billion more than estimates Morgan Stanley issued less than a year ago. Futures pointing to more gains on Wall Street. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network number one in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number one in client support, number one in firm leadership, number one in operational support, number one in compensation, number one in professional development support, and number one in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people building great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
CNBC's Wilfred Frost, like I said, joining us now from London. And Wilfred, you spoke with former Prime Minister Tony Blair
ditch the
about
British
Brexit.
winter and chase
What
the sun
exactly is
across
his
the globe
take, and is
with
he
British
optimistic
Airways from
something
London
can
Gatwick
get done?
and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal
Good morning,
blue
Dom.
sea.
Great to be joining you on Worldwide Exchange, of course. As you said, just
Fly
caught up
from
with
London
former UK
Gatwick to
Prime
the
Minister
Maldives with
Tony
British
Blair.
Airways.
And on the
From
topic of Brexit, I
£300 each
began
way
by
based on a
asking him
return
whether he
fare.
was
Don't miss
annoyed
out.
that the
Book by
Remain
November the
parties,
12th
Labour
at
and the Liberal Democrats,
ba.com/wintersun
had
with British
caved to the
Airways.
Prime Minister Boris
Incredible
Johnson's wishes
is within reach.
to have a general
Booking fees and
election
conditions may apply.
before
Limited
a
availability.
second
Selected
referendum.
flights in March.
Well, I think it was the wrong thing to do.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, shortage jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, like borrow market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
In cinemas November 15th. So you're going to build a car to beat Ferrari with a Ford, correct? Get ready for Le Mans 66. I hate guys like us because we're different. Starring Matt Damon and Christian Bale.
What are they doing? Making your car go faster.
That's more like it! Based on the incredible true story of Ford versus Ferrari.
No, I thought the whole point was to win the damn race.
Le Mans 66. In cinemas and IMAX November 15th.
If you're collecting your prescription, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free prescriptions. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of up to £100. Thankfully, there's a simple way to find out if you should be paying. Search Check Before You Tick online and use our eligibility checker to find out if your benefits mean you can claim for free. or you can ask your pharmacy team. So always remember to check before you take. This was brought to you by the NHS.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Rishad Salamat.
As companies see true value in ESG, they will have to work harder in using it as a dashboard rather than a method to inform stakeholders. Joining us now from Singapore is Robert Rubinstein, a TBLI Group founding partner and chairman. Tell us what impacting investing is, first of all.
It's trying to achieve a market rate return as well as this measurable social and environmental added value.
Is that there are two negotiations. The first negotiation, which Boris Johnson...
Investment which takes place, which actually just changed things in society here as well. And how much evidence is there that you get more bang for your buck as a shareholder seeking returns from this type of investing?
That will run until the end of next year.
Well, I mean, if you look at, we've been educating asset owners and managers about ESG and impact investing for 25 years. And over those 25 years, there's been hundreds, literally thousands of reports showing that at worst there's no underperformance, and at best there's an outperformance. But the issue is more about, not about proof, it's about belief. If people believe that it's not going to work, then they will believe that. So that's been more the challenge, more the education side, because the proof is clearly there, but if you don't want to believe it, then it's not going to happen.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are rising as investors kept an eye on signs that the U.S. and China are inching toward a trade deal. Treasuries are falling while the yuan strengthened past 7 for the first time since August. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 8 points. Dow futures up 85. NASDAQ futures up 30. The DAX in Germany's up 0.1%. 10-year Treasury down 10/30 seconds. Yield 1.81%. Yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.9% or 49 cents at 57.03 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.3% or $4.20 at 15.0690 an ounce. The euro 1.1130 against the dollar. British pound 1.2902 and the yen 108.84. Today we're looking for a report on the trade balance out at 8:30 Wall Street time. At 10 it's the JOLTS jobs report and a look at the service industry from the Institute for Supply Management. And Shake Shack is down more than 17% after third quarter comp sales missed analyst estimates and it lowered its sales forecast for the year. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. It is Election Day. President Trump paid a visit to Lexington, Kentucky last night to campaign for Republican incumbent Governor Matt Bevin. Democratic challenger Andy Beshear made his final campaign stop in his hometown of Louisville, where he called for change. Transcripts from the depositions of 2 diplomats dealing with U.S. relations with Ukraine are expected to be released by the House impeachment inquiry today. In Monday Night Football, the Giants lost to the Cowboys 37-18. The turning point was when a black cat ran out on the field, interrupted the game. The Cowboys went on a tear after that. In the NBA, the Nets won along with the Warriors. In the NHL, the Rangers lost, the Bruins won. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Welcome in this morning, Simon French, Chief Economist at Panmure Gordon. Nice, as always, to talk with you, Simon. And it seems as though conviction is building in the market that the U.S. and China are going to strike a Phase 1 trade deal. Do you share the market's optimism for this?
Good morning, Nathan. Pleasure to join you. Yes, I do share that optimism. Probably not on a long-term basis. I think we probably need to revise our language to stop talking about a deal in the sense that this is going to be an issue that goes away. I've been telling investors
with British Airways
most
from
of the
London
year that they have to get used to, over the course of many years, a conflict between US and China on economic, social,
to Barbados
issues.
with British Airways, with flights and 7-night hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply.
Do you think that this near-term deal will be enough
to reverse some of the headwinds that the global economy has been facing over the last several months?
Well, I think there's two parts to this story. First of all, the headwinds the global economy has faced, there are signs of economies coming to terms with the rerouting
Teaching your
of
kids
supply
how to
chains
save
that
may
come
not be
about
this easy,
from
but you can get them learning good habits and skills from an early age, thanks to the range of children's savings accounts from Yorkshire Building Society. Just another example of real help with real life. Find out more at ybs.co.uk.
Of a spillover into
it's hard to enjoy your daily
yoga routine when your mind is on your next VAT return. Some of the tariffs and some of those import restrictive barriers that come into play.
New VAT Smart Scan technology does the work for you. As the deadline approaches, it checks for duplicates, looks for anomalies
in terms of economic activity. I think that will be a longer term story, but I think you can anticipate that will start to kick in the second and third quarters of 2020 if we get a phase one deal.
So has that shift in global supply chain started to take hold, and what effect does that have?
Your sex drive can disappear.
Well, it has started to take hold, and we're starting to see some of the traditional trade relationships between the US and China rerouted through to third countries. We're starting to see beneficiaries and indeed collateral damage beneficiaries, countries such as Vietnam have seen big pickups in their global trade volumes. Countries like Germany that currently aren't involved in the trade war have just been penalised as a result
it's time to rise up and step up to a new Vauxhall SUV with £4,000 guaranteed scrappage or part exchange value with 4.9% APR representative. Drivers, it's time to trade up. Search Vauxhall Trade Up or visit your local Vauxhall retailer now. T's and C's apply. Trade-in car must be registered in your name for at least 90 days. Conditional sale and personal
we do
contract
find
purchase
ourselves
only.
in an
Subject to status, 18
environment
plus,
where
Vauxhall Finance.
some of the
Other
structural
deposit
issues that
contributions may
the
be available
U.S.
if you
is
don't have a
looking for
trade-in
China
vehicle.
to
Ends 26th of
reverse
November.
itself on aren't reversed.
Welcome back to the
How
show.
do
Let's get a check on
investors
some of the other
adapt to
big
that?
stock movers of the morning.
Yeah,
Marriott's third quarter profit fell 23%. That missed forecast. The world's largest hotel company is also lowering its outlook for a key industry metric, which is revenue per available room. Now, Marriott says growth has moderated across its markets, and the demonstrations in Hong Kong have hurt business there. Those shares off by about 1.5% pre-market. Now, Groupon did swing to a third quarter loss. Adjusted earnings and revenues fell short of analyst estimates. The company citing lower traffic as well as uncertainty in the global economy, especially over that Brexit that we just talked about this last hour. Those shares off by almost 8% pre-market. And then shares of Adobe to finish things off on a positive note, moving higher. A better than expected outlook for fiscal 2020 is behind those moves. Adobe is also raising fourth quarter
Only about a minute
guidance
left here. We get trade balance data in a couple of hours. What are your expectations there, given the slump in imports and exports we saw in the release from the Commerce Department last week?
That's at around 11:15 a.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to tune in for that big chat. Well, still to come on the show, the impeachment inquiry into President Trump set to escalate today as lawmakers prepare to release testimony from key figures in the investigation. We'll get a live report from Capitol Hill. And coming up on Squawk Box, Boeing Chairman David Calhoun joins for an exclusive interview and conversation. You can catch that.
Simon French, always good getting your insights. Thanks again for being with us this morning. That is Simon French, Chief Economist at Panmure Gordon. And again, we get that trade balance data from the Commerce Department at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. And as we watch the offshore yuan against the dollar, it is strengthening beyond that 7 handle now at 6.9903 against the dollar. As for the broader market, risk on, certainly taking hold for investors this morning with S&P futures higher by 8.5 points. Dow futures a gain of 86. NASDAQ futures higher by 30.5. The 10-year down 11. 30 seconds yield 1.81%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.59%. Stay with us. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
If they hadn't stopped at the first beer house they came to.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Shares of Uber are motoring lower in pre-market trading because two things watched closely by Wall Street showed lackluster gains in the latest quarter.
Terms
that
and
was
conditions apply.
bookings and monthly active users. Uber beat estimates for quarterly revenue and its loss, which was $585 million, and said it would turn a profit by the fourth quarter of 2021, echoing the forecast from its smaller rival, Lyft. Stock futures point to more gains at the open, with the major benchmarks all at new record highs. Investors continue to watch for more progress on a Phase 1 U.S.-China trade deal. Today we also get an update on the wide-ranging services part of the U.S. economy and a look at job openings and labor turnover in September. Allergan and Match Group report earnings. Checking overseas markets, European stocks slightly higher. Asian markets also rose today. Chancellor Betty, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize.
This is the sound of Helen and Peter, hiking to the fairy tale fortress high above the winter wonderland below. Or it would be, if they hadn't stopped at the first beer house they came to. There it is, Helen and Peter. There's your Incredible. Fly from London Gatwick to Salzburg from £29 each way. With British Airways, Incredible is within reach. Terms and conditions apply. Limited availability and dates. Fare quoted is each way based on a return. CBA.com/Gatwick for details.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things, like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month. £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre. But you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers and trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
This autumn, as the nights draw in, beat the cold with Now TV. Curl up with the latest blockbusters, including Bohemian Rhapsody and Hotel Mumbai. Plus, with over 40 new movies added each month, from Aquaman to How to Train Your Dragon 3, Now TV's got you covered, whatever you feel like watching. Get cozy with the latest and best movies for just $11.99 a month. Search Now TV today. 18 plus month passes auto renewals unless cancelled. Terms apply.
Will cancer affect my sex life?
Your sex drive can disappear.
It's another Tuesday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and relax with 365 beautiful beaches.
Cancer Research UK. Visit us online or give us a call on 0808 800
Fly from London Gatwick to Antigua with British Airways from £223 each way based on a return fare.
From the
Don't miss
Bloomberg
out.
Interactive
Book by
Broker
November the
Studio
12th
in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
The future
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are higher as we again more signs the U.S. and China could be closer to a deal. China's asking the White House to roll back some tariffs as part of a Phase 1 agreement. Sources tell us Beijing wants rollbacks on as much as $360 billion of Chinese goods. Here with more is Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Beijing.
These two sides are moving closer, it seems, to getting this deal locked down. And of course, any trip to the US wouldn't be risk-free for President Xi, which is maybe why we're now hearing that the US is considering removing these tariffs, heading into potentially a President Xi and President Trump meeting to sign off on Phase 1 of one of these states in the US at some point in November.
While China is asking for a rollback on tariffs, there's no word yet on a decision from the White House.
President Xi Jinping, meanwhile, touting China's commitment to the global trading order. At a keynote speech in Shanghai, the Chinese president said he will lower tariffs and institutional transaction costs.
On the energy front, OPEC's annual World Oil Report is painting a grim picture for the group. OPEC projects demand for its oil declining and its share of world markets shrinking as U.S. shale floods the market. Right now, Brent crude is trading at $62.78 a barrel. That's up about 1.1%, and NYMEX crude oil is up 0.8% at $56.99.
Turning to earnings now, shares of Uber Technologies are down 5.8% in early trading after results that fell flat with investors. Here with details is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Uber improved its loss forecast for the year, but disappointed investors on some closely watched financial measures. Gross bookings, food delivery, and monthly active users were all below analyst estimates for the third quarter. The results come as the San Francisco-based company seeks to reassure investors it can evolve from a simple ride-hailing service to a global, all-in-one transportation platform. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Charlie, thank you. And again, S&P futures are higher this morning, up 8 points. Dow futures up 82. NASDAQ futures up 30. The DAX in Germany is up about 0.2%. CAC in Paris up 0.2%. And the FTSE 100 up 1/3%. 10-year Treasury down 11/30 seconds. The yield 1.81%. The yield on the 2-year at 1.59%. COMEX gold is lower, down 1/3% on $4.80 at $1,506.30 an ounce. The euro is at 1.1129 against the dollar, British pound 1.2901, and the yen 108.86. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Meaning the difference between
all right, thanks, Karen. It's 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Michael,
thank you very much, Nathan. House Democrats say more transcripts of the closed-door testimony in the impeachment inquiry will be released today. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter reports.
The first of the releases was Marie Yovanovitch, who said she felt threatened by the president, who said she was going to go through some things. She said she disagreed with the increasing pressure put on Ukraine to cooperate in gathering information. Judiciary Chair Adam Schiff.
It is someone who also is one of the first witnesses to this irregular back channel that the president established with Rudy Giuliani.
And he says the no-shows this week from the Trump administration will hurt the president in the long run.
This will be further evidence of an effort by the administration to obstruct the lawful and constitutional duties of Congress.
Republicans, Congressman Jim Jordan.
CNBC's Eunice Yoon joins us now from Shanghai at China's Import Expo.
In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Voters in 4 states will cast ballots today in elections that's considered as a snapshot of the national mood amid impeachment proceedings and a crowded Democratic presidential primary. President Trump campaigned in Mississippi and Kentucky in the hopes of avoiding Democratic upsets in governor's races. The president in Lexington.
They want to obliterate the rule of law, drive out faith from the public square,
talking about how this would be good for
silence
American
you
consumers.
online,
Of course, this expo
confiscate
is all about the Chinese
your
consumer. In fact,
guns.
the Chinese government
Virginia
had
Democrats are hoping to
this
take control of the state legislature. Legislative seats are also on the ballot in New Jersey. One issue voters in Jersey City will face is whether to curb short-term rentals like Airbnb. In New York City is the Office of Public Advocate, now held by Democrat Jumaane Williams. He faces Republican City Council member Joseph Borelli and Libertarian Devin Balkine. Voters in Queens will choose a new district attorney to replace long-serving district attorney Richard Brown who died in May. President Trump formally began the process of withdrawing the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says President Trump made the decision to withdraw because of the unfair economic burden imposed on American workers, businesses, and taxpayers. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts from more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, the losses keep piling up for the Giants. Fifth in a row, sixth straight versus Dallas. The Giants' record over the last 3 seasons is now 10-31, 5-16 at home. They did some good things last night. Daniel Jones, 54 yards rushing, and he hooked up with Saquon Barkley on a 65-yard pass play. Golden Tate made a sensational one-handed catch, set up a touchdown. But a couple of turnovers, some costly penalties, too many times settling for a field goal. Dallas pulled away and won 37-18 over Pat Shermer's Giants.
And for those people who are listening right now on Sirius XM channel 112, what you're not seeing is Eunice standing in a big exhibition hall with a Facebook logo behind her, with an Instagram logo behind her, with a Microsoft logo behind her. These are all very large Western-oriented tech companies. What exactly is the tone at the expo with regard to whether or not there is real optimism among that community?
Here we go now with the Giants against the Jets on Sunday. The Nets gave up 48 points in the third quarter, but Kyrie Irving scored 39, and they beat the Pelicans in Brooklyn 135-125. Rangers lost to Ottawa 6-2. There's college hoops at the Garden tonight, a doubleheader involving the top 4 ranked teams in the nation. The Mets hiring of Carlos Beltran continues the trend all around baseball, hiring a young manager without any previous managerial experience. The Mets GM is Brody Van Wegenen.
They're also talking a lot about
Carlos's hiring is a signal and an affirmation that is clear and loud to this organization's core tenets of being a players-first organization, or players-first here. Carlos Beltran will be a players' manager.
Played for the Mets and Yankees, and the Yanks almost hired Beltran 2 years ago when they instead hired Aaron Boone. Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashower.
All right, John, thank you. It's 5:37 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now. It's the special New Economy issue, including a look at the future of the European Central Bank under new President Christine Lagarde. Yana Rando wrote the story for Bloomberg Business Week.
She takes over the ECB at a time when the economy is not doing really well. We're in a slowdown. Germany, the largest economy in the region, probably is already in recession.
You can read more about this and other stories in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. Terminal customers can subscribe to the magazine at MAG.go and listen to Business Week with Carol Vassar and Jason Kelly weekdays at 2 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio. It's 5:38 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Ed Corey. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, Nathan. A federal bankruptcy court has approved a baseline bid for the College of New Rochelle's campus option that slashed the property's price tag by more than half of what the school wants. The offer of $21 million, formally cited as the lead bid last month, is much less than the $50 million the school has indicated it needs. Allergan disagrees with plaintiffs that personal injury suits over textured biocell silicone breast implants should be combined. The company told a special panel of judges the litigation belongs in federal court in New Jersey, its corporate headquarters, and where the first 2 suits were filed. Bridgeport Hospital in Connecticut is joining about 100 health systems nationwide, becoming part of an initiative to improve care for seniors. CT Post says the hospital has joined the Age-Friendly Health Systems Initiative, a movement to improve health care for older adults. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
All right, thank you, Ed. It's 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KTRH in Houston. Lawmakers say Boeing CEO didn't provide complete testimony when he was on Capitol Hill last week.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and on WHAM 1180 in Rochester, New York, I'm reporting that Xerox is ending its 57-year venture with Fuji, selling its stake to the Japanese partner.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting that weaker travel demand resulted in a smaller than expected profit at Marriott.
I'm Roger Hearing on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the election of the new House of Commons Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle.
I'm Tom Busby, and on KYW in Philadelphia, I'll be reporting on Pennsylvania launching its first online poker game.
I'm Steve Podeskin on 1010 Wins in New York. I'm reporting on disappointing comp sales growth for Shake Shack.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. Another item we're watching, corporate earnings on the way. We get results from nearly 20 S&P 500 companies today, including Allergan and Mylan. We also get the first earnings report from Peloton since its IPO in September. Bloomberg customers can check the earnings calendar on the terminal. Just type ACDR. Go. S&P futures are higher by 8.5 points. Dow futures a gain of 81 points. NASDAQ futures up 31 points. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and...
It's another Tuesday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests.
The curve with their latest cut. So I think that it's a perfect...
Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Turn to NBC's Philip Mena live in the New York newsroom with the latest. Good morning, Philip.
Oh my God. Hey, Don, good morning. A domestic terror attack averted in Colorado.
Yeah,
the FBI arrested a man who allegedly planned to blow up Temple Emmanuel over the weekend. Court documents say Richard Holzer attracted the FBI's attention with white supremacist Facebook postings. Holzer appeared Monday in federal court to face the charges and is asking for a court-appointed lawyer.
It's hard to find a children's gift which doesn't have a short shelf life. They'll eat all the chocolates in 5 minutes, finish their video games by the end of the week, and grow out of their trainers before you know it. So instead of buying them something just for Christmas, buy them something that's for life. Premium bonds from NS&I. Every month they'll have the chance to win cash prizes. And now you can buy premium bonds for any child. Start their savings journey from just £25. Search Gift Premium Bonds to find out more.
In the US and in
Teaching shapes lives. Becoming a teacher means a career of opportunity. You can head a subject department or work towards school leadership. And with a minimum starting salary of £24,000 to £30,000, teaching has never been so rewarding. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Starting salary dependent on location.
London. Switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and the Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network is voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Drivers, it's time to rise up and step up to a new Vauxhall SUV. I've got to tell you about £4,000 guaranteed scrappage or part exchange value with 4.9% APR representative. Drivers, it's time to trade up. Search Vauxhall Trade Up or visit your local Vauxhall retailer now. T's and C's apply. Trade-in car must be registered in your name for at least 90 days. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status 18 plus Vauxhall finance.
There's so
Other
much to
deposit
do in
contributions
Bath.
may be available if you don't have a trade-in vehicle. End
Discover
26th
the
of
magic
November.
of Bath.
News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news
With
update.
British Airways from London.
Transcripts from the depositions of two diplomats dealing with U.S. relations with Ukraine expected to be released by the House Intelligence Committee today. The transcripts were released yesterday from the deposition of former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. Correspondent Alex Marquardt.
Yovanovitch telling lawmakers that the rogue Ukraine policy led by President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, was not good policy, kind of a partisan game that cut the ground from underneath the U.S. Embassy. Ukrainians were wondering whether I was going to be leaving, Yovanovitch said, whether we really represented the president.
Longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone goes on trial today over charges he tried to exploit Russian-hacked Hillary Clinton emails for political gain and then lied to investigators about it. Elections in 4 states today, races for governor in Mississippi and Kentucky, voters in Virginia and New Jersey choosing their state legislators.
Search for QuickBooks.
I'm Christopher Cruz.
For making tax digital. QuickBooks. Backing. If you're at the top of your profession, you're listening. Are those gains all going to the elite? Bloomberg Surveillance.
Does it spread beyond manufacturing?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Ferro. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg. The world is listening.
Ask Hive to boost
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are climbing as investors keep an eye on signs that the U.S. and China are inching toward a trade deal. Let me check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 9 points, Dow futures up 84, NASDAQ futures up 32, the DAX in Germany's up 0.1%. 10-year Treasury down 10.30 seconds, yield 1.81%, yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.7% or 38 cents at 56.92 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.3% or $4.40 at 15.0670 an ounce. The euro 1.1130 against the dollar. British pound 1.2903 and the yen is at 108.85. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, said she was warned by officials in the country that President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was maneuvering against her and that they were concerned about getting dragged into U.S. politics. Marie Yovanovitch's deposition was released by House committees leading the impeachment investigation. The former confidant of President Trump, Roger Stone, is going on trial over charges related to his alleged efforts to exploit the Russian-hacked Hillary Clinton emails for political gain. In Monday Night Football, the Giants lost to the Cowboys 37-18. In the NBA, the Nets won along with the Wizards. Or I should say the Warriors, rather. In the NHL, the Rangers lost, the Bruins won. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Okay, Michael, thanks a lot. It's coming up to 5:49 on Wall Street. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. I want to get more on our top story now. Signs that the U.S. and China are inching ever closer to a Phase 1 trade deal. As part of an agreement, China is asking the White House to roll back some tariffs. Sources are telling us Beijing wants rollbacks on as much as $360 billion of duties on Chinese goods. We're also hearing reports the White House is considering that move. Bloomberg Chief Asia Economics Correspondent Enda Curran joins us now with more on the phone. So are we getting closer to this Phase 1 deal, Enda?
and to create the
Well, it
infamous
does
dish.
feel like a
So
lot of
despite
pieces
how
are
that
coming
may sound
together
to some
now. We had a
people
major
like me,
keynote
the
speech by
Thanksgiving
China's
sets are very
President Xi
popular with
Jinping
other
in
people like
Shanghai today,
Dom,
where he
and
laid out
last
the
year's
stall really
sold out
set up
Let's put
China's
some
government as one that's
disclosure on
open
this. The reason
to
why you are
more
skeptical
competition
is
in
because
its
you are in
economy.
fact a
He said it's a
vegetarian.
government that
so that
stands
doesn't
by its
sound
word and by its promises,
great to
and he made
me,
clear that
but it
China
also
is in
speaks to
favour of
Pringles, which is
globalization and
their whole
the
shtick is
multilateral
you
order.
stack
Now, the
different
takeaway from
flavors
that
on top
was,
of each other.
even without mentioning the US or President Trump, the signal was that President Xi is in the market for a trade agreement, and that's why, as you mentioned, we're now getting down to details over where any signing agreement might take place, and there's wrangling going on over the extent to which the Trump administration will roll back any previous tariff increases. So we're not there yet, but it does sound like all the indications are we're moving closer to a trade agreement.
Now, it does sound, though, like the prospect of a rollback of tariffs would be a pretty significant detail to be worked out in this deal. I mean, how big a concession would that be on the U.S. part?
Yeah, well, on the Chinese side, we know that they've been saying for some time they want tariffs rolled back. It's been one of their demands, of course. Remember, China, of course, has its own political audience that President Xi has to play to. They will need to be getting something in return from the U.S., at least some kind of commitment around a time frame for rolling back tariffs at the very least. But as you mentioned, on the U.S. side, clearly tariffs have been one of their strongest points of leverage. It's been one of the sticks that President Trump has used, and he claims it has brought China to the negotiating table. So whether or not they will be willing to go the extra yard and remove tariffs, it probably does remain to be seen. Perhaps it might come in the part of the oversight of any trade agreement, whereby if it's considered that China is meeting the conditions of the trade agreement, perhaps then the US might look at those tariffs. But these are details that we don't know yet, and that will become clear, I guess, over the coming days and weeks.
What's the sense from people you're talking to as to whether China might be open to something like a partial rollback of some of these tariffs? Is it looking for all or nothing, or is it willing to meet somewhere in the middle with the U.S.?
Yet another
it's difficult to say. You know, there isn't the same level of transparency in terms of the signals that we get out of Beijing. Broadly speaking, I think most observers would say that, judging by the official commentary, China is in the market for a trade agreement. They do want time out in this trade war with the US because their economy is hurting. They are willing to buy more US produce and make pledges around opening up the economy and allowing more foreign competition. But as you say, just how far they're willing to give up their own red lines remains to be seen. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, they have their own political audience that President Xi has to play for. One of his demands will be to get concessions back from the US side, and that's where tariffs come into play. So it's going to be something of a judgment call for President Xi and his Chinese team as to whether what kind of pledge they can accept from the US on tariffs, whether it is an immediate lifting of some tariffs or a pledge to do so at some future point if China does deliver on the trade agreement.
Now, in the meantime, China has been making moves to strengthen its economy ahead of any signing of a Phase 1 deal. How has that worked out? What impact has that had?
Well, broadly speaking, the economy is on something of a gradual descent. There are no signs of panic per se just yet. There's certainly plenty of softness, in particular in the manufacturing sector. Prices are in deflationary territory. Profits are under pressure. Cost of servicing debt is rising. So there's pressure there. The consumer, the retail, service side of things is holding up somewhat. And that means that the approach by the authorities in terms of the discipline that they are, the stimulus that they're rolling out, is somewhat disciplined so far. There hasn't been the open spigots that we've seen in previous downturns. They've been tweaking through the central bank. They tweaked again today with a lending rate to banks to try and ensure there's enough liquidity in the system. They've been funneling money out to small and medium-sized businesses, and they've been pushing through tax cuts. The big question is, will all of that be enough to keep a floor under this gradual descent, or will the authorities have to step in with much bigger stimulus in the months ahead? And that's where we go back to where we started this conversation. If the trade agreement reached, that would be a sigh of relief for the Chinese economy. It will give them some time to get back on their feet. If there's not, or back to square one with tariffs being increased, well, then that would certainly heighten the pressure on the authorities to roll out more support.
Much more to watch. And to Curran, thanks as always. That is a Bloomberg
has
Chief
decided
Asia
not to join
Economics
a huge
correspondent
Asia-Pacific
in the Current.
trade pact.
Karen?
The major trading bloc.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning. From Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
A high school that kicked a varsity cheerleader off her squad because of profanity-laced Twitter postings is immune from the cheerleader's First Amendment suit. The Fifth Circuit ruled the law regulating off-campus speech was not clearly established at the time of the incident. Rural phone companies in Indiana and Minnesota are suing T-Mobile for allegedly playing phony ringtones to avoid connecting calls to parts of the U.S. that would incur expensive routing charges. And makers of generic drugs are frustrated by an increasing number of patent challenges that get tossed out by the Patent Trial and Appeal Board before cases can be heard.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And also we have...
And now another legal story we're watching. Taylor Swift's high-profile copyright battle with two songwriters who claim her hit Shake It Off infringes on lyrics from their 2001 song. Last year, a federal judge threw out the suit. Now the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has reinstated it. For more on the decision, Bloomberg's June Grosso speaks with intellectual property litigator Terrence Ross, a partner at Patent Muchin Rosenman.
Terry, why did the Ninth Circuit reverse the lower court's decision?
The Ninth Circuit decided that the lower court judge had decided at too soon a point in the case that the allegedly copied work was lacking in originality. So this was essentially a procedural ruling, sending the decision back to the court and instructing the lower court to reconsider at a later point in the case whether or not the claimed copyright phrase had sufficient originality to allow a lawsuit.
Explain what the copyright claim is. Is it just over these short phrases?
There's actually two allegations. One is over this word phrase. The plaintiff's song is called Play Is Gonna Play, and everyone knows around the world probably Taylor Swift's song, Players Gonna Play, 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 Haters Gonna Hate, 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 Shake It Off. And so that short phrase, Players Gonna Play, is one aspect of the case, but the other aspect is a four-part lyrical sequence in the song, which was also found to be lacking in sufficient originality to be copyrightable in the first place.
Courts routinely dismiss copyright infringement claims. Isn't this a threshold question that the judge could answer? These seem to be ordinary phrases and lyrics.
I agree with that completely. Indeed, the United States Copyright Office has a regulation that says it will not allow short phrases to be copyrighted, and they don't take applications on short phrases and run them by the general public to see if they have sufficient degree of originality. So I think this decision in some respects surprised many copyright practitioners, because remember, you don't get to copyright just anything. There is at least a threshold requirement of showing some minimal degree of originality and creativity to justify a copyright.
And that's Terrence Ross, a partner at Patent Muchin Rosenman, speaking with the Bloomberg's June Grosso. You can catch more of that interview, plus analysis of the latest legal news, by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Futures higher this morning, and Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Just because you travel doesn't mean you can't keep your routine. The more obstacles travel puts between us and our well-being, the more we strive to work well. At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we're focused on empowering your well-being. With Westin meetings, you work and feel your best with nutritious snacks and nourishing smoothies that give you the energy you need to power through any meeting. Don't leave your well-being behind. We give you the choice to get up or to rise. Search Westin online to find out more. Westin, let's rise.
It's another Tuesday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests.
All right. Thank you very much, Nate Fisher over at Strategic Wealth Partners. We appreciate
Fly
your call.
from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British
Well,
Airways. From £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Good morning. Trade optimism again.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plan. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network is voted by British Trusted Reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
We're 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Squawk Box begins right now.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures gain as Beijing and Washington move closer to a trade deal.
We're so close. China wants to make a deal so badly.
Good morning.
China's currency strengthens, stocks in Asia climb, and havens slide.
Plus, the outlook for OPEC darkens as demand for oil declines.
More transcripts of testimony will be released today by House impeachment panels. Plus, it's Election Day. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Monday Night Football at MetLife saw the Cowboys pull away, send the Giants to a fifth straight loss. A win for the Nets, a loss for the Rangers.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Right now, the 10-year looks like it is yielding 1.81%. So back up over.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. futures are gaining this morning. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 8 points, Dow futures up 84, NASDAQ futures up 29, the DAX in Germany's up 0.1%, CAC in Paris up 0.2%, and the FTSE 100 up 0.3%. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 1.8%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was up 0.5%. 10-year Treasury down 10.30 seconds, yield 1.81%. The yield on the 2-year 1.59%. COMEX gold is down 1/3 of a percent on $5.10 at $15.06 an ounce. The euro 1.1122 against the dollar. The yen at 108.84. Nathan.
And Karen, it is all about trade this morning as we see more signs the U.S. and China could be closer to a deal.
We're so close. China wants to make a deal so badly.
And President Trump touted the negotiations at a rally in Kentucky. Meanwhile, China is asking the White House to roll back some tariffs as part of a Phase 1 agreement. Sources say Beijing wants rollbacks on as much as $360 billion of Chinese goods. Here with more is Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Shanghai.
They said if you want to get a full deal, a comprehensive deal, all of those tariffs will need to be removed. And if you want to get to Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, then they have hinted, particularly in state media, that they want to see at least some of those tariffs rolled back. So now we're hearing, of course, that maybe the US is considering lifting the tariffs that were imposed on September the 1st on about $110 billion worth of Chinese goods, tariffs that were valued at about 15%, by the way. Now, the debate, of course, continues within D.C., but maybe that is the price that the U.S. is willing to pay in order to get President Xi to the U.S. to sign off on the Phase 1 part of the deal, because, of course, we've heard that Chinese officials are considering that, and that the states of Iowa, Alaska, and Hawaii are in play in terms of potential locations.
Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie reports while China is asking for a rollback on tariffs, there's no word yet on a decision from the White House. China's currency strengthened past 7 per dollar on the news. It's the first time it's reached that level since August.
Meanwhile, President Xi Jinping is touting the global trading order and open economies at a keynote speech in China. We get the details from Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
President Xi says China will generate more imports and will cut tariffs further. He told the China International Import Expo China would open its doors wider. This expo is designed to show that China is shifting its economy toward consumption by buying more foreign goods. This was China again positioning itself as a champion of the global trading order at a time when the U.S. is backing away. As a colleague put it, the coded message here is, look what we have to offer. Why would you risk it? In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thank you. And the head of Goldman Sachs likes what he's hearing on trade negotiations, CEO David Sullivan weighed in on the progress in an exclusive interview with Bloomberg.
If you're watching what's coming out of the administration in Washington, if you're listening to what's coming out of China, I think it feels like both are incentivized to have some sort of a phase one deal. So there looks like there's some progress and some movement forward. I think the issues are complicated, and there'll be a lot more to talk about, but I'm relatively optimistic. It feels like we're going to have something constructive happen.
Goldman Sachs stock has taken a hit since trade tensions ramped up in April of last year. It's down 12% in that time compared to a gain of 16% for the S&P 500.
The talk on trade gave a boost to equities in Asia overnight. Bloomberg's Rashad Salamat joins us from Hong Kong with details. Good morning, Rashad.
Good morning, Karen. Asian stocks pushing higher. Chinese equities, including those in Hong Kong, getting a boost from the central bank. The PBOC reduced the cost of one-year funds to banks for the first time since 2016. Real standout, there was Tokyo. Japanese stocks playing catch-up after Monday's public holiday. Also, the improved mood around trade is touching the fractious relationship between Japan and South Korea. We've got both leaderships there agreeing to calm things down. The Nikkei 225 ending the session 1 3/4% to the upside. In Hong Kong, I'm Rashad Salamat, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Rish, thank you. OPEC is out with its annual World Oil Report, and it paints a grim picture for the group. OPEC projects demand for its oil declining and its shares of world markets shrinking as U.S. shale continues flooding the market. We get more from Bloomberg's Stuart Wallace in London.
There's been no sign from within OPEC's own research that we're about to hit a turnaround in the global economy and suddenly everything's looking rosy again. So they're looking at exactly the same numbers as everyone else, and I think they're coming to exactly the same conclusions as most people in most asset classes. It's going to be a troubling time ahead the next year or so.
And oil reversed earlier losses on that report. Right now, Brent's trading at $62.82 a barrel, a gain of 1.1%, while West Texas Intermediate is at $57.05, a gain of 0.9%.
Turning to earnings now, Uber Technologies is out with results that fell flat with investors. The ride-hailing company beat estimates for revenue, but posted lackluster gains in bookings and monthly active users. That has shares down almost 6% in early trading. Mandeep Singh covers Uber for Bloomberg Intelligence.
I don't know if investors are going to want to sell at this price simply because the fundamentals seem to be improving. There seem to be at an inflection when it comes to profitability, but the sentiment is really negative.
Since its IPO in May, shares of Uber are down more than 30%. The stock could see more pressure today when a lockup for some shareholders expires.
We also get the first set of earnings today from Peloton following its IPO in September. Here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Bloomberg Intelligence says Peloton's long-term growth prospects hinge on building its customer base, which currently consists of more than 500,000 subscribers. It's done well selling subscriptions attached to its fitness hardware, but high costs could weigh on near-term profitability. Peloton generates most of its revenue from the sale of upscale exercise bikes and treadmills. In New York, I'm Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Larry, thank you. And we have more trouble brewing for WeWork. The company is being sued by investors over a $1.7 billion payout to founder Adam Newman. Futures this morning higher. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. It's 6:07 now on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has the latest world and national news. Hey, Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Transcripts from the depositions of two diplomats dealing with U.S. relations with Ukraine are expected to be released today in the House impeachment inquiry. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff says transcripts come from the former Special Envoy for Ukraine, Kurt Volker, and U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland.
Republicans were present for all of these depositions, and in fact, they had equal opportunity with Democrats to ask questions, and you will see they took full advantage of those opportunities to ask questions.
It's Election Day, and the nation is looking at 4 key states that could give some insight on next year's presidential elections. President Trump traveled to Kentucky for a rally. Other states being watched are Mississippi, Virginia, and New Jersey. One issue on the ballot in Jersey City includes curbing short-term rentals like Airbnb. Assembly seats are also up for grabs in New Jersey and New York. Voters in Queens will choose a new district attorney to replace long-serving district attorney Richard Brown, who died in May. New York City Police Commissioner James O'Neill is stepping down after 3 years in the position to head to the private sector.
This is the right time for me. And it's time I have to move forward. NYPD has to move forward, and I know they're going to do it.
Dermot Shea takes over at the end of the month. Opening statements could come as soon as today, as President Trump's confidant Roger Stone goes on trial for lying to Congress, obstruction, and witness tampering. Bloomberg's Bob Moon has a preview.
Did the longtime Republican operative keep the Trump campaign informed on what stolen documents WikiLeaks had and when they'd be released? Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, told Congress early this year that he was in Trump's office when Trump put Stone on his speakerphone with WikiLeaks news.
There would be a massive dump of emails that would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. Mr. Trump responded to the effect. Wouldn't that be great?
Stone infamously predicted in an August 2016 tweet that it would soon be Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's quote time in the barrel. 6 weeks before, WikiLeaks published Podesta documents. Early this year, Podesta said Stone is headed for prison.
Maybe when the cell door clanks, reach the top of Mount Teedy
Bob
or
Moon,
relax
Bloomberg
on a
Daybreak.
sunny
Global News 24 hours a day on air and at
Fly
TikTok
from
on
London
Twitter, powered
Gatwick
by
to
more.
Tenerife with British
2,700
Airways.
journalists and analysts in more than
With flights
120
and 7 nights
countries.
hotel from just
I'm Michael Barr. This
£349
is
per
Bloomberg.
person.
Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Eighth and fifth straight loss to the Giants, sixth in a row against the Cowboys. Dallas, who inexplicably lost to the Jets a few weeks ago at MetLife, returned last night and beat Big Blue 37-18. The game was closer than that. Dallas led by just a point going to the fourth quarter. But red zone problems for the Giants. 4 times they settled for field goals. Their quarterback is Daniel Jones.
The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds applied to unlimited data. Best network is voted by readers and trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 74 million. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive
Jones had a fumble and an interception while Dak Prescott threw for 3 TDs, and Zeke Elliott outrushed Saquon Barkley 139-28. Sunday at MetLife, it's the Giants against the Jets. Two teams with a combined record of 3-14. At Barclays, next outscored the Pelicans 135-125. Kyrie Irving continues to pour in the points. He had 39. He's averaging 32 a game, second in the NBA. Brandon Ingram had 40 for New Orleans. Golden State won for the first time in its new arena at the Garden. Rangers never in this one. They lost to Ottawa 6-2. At Citi Field, 42-year-old Carlos Beltran introduced new manager.
I'm overwhelmed, a little bit overwhelmed by this opportunity, but at the same time, I'm excited. Looking forward to manage this ball club. Looking forward to continue to establish relationships in this city. I just can't wait to rewrite our story, being the manager of the New York Mets.
22nd manager in team history in the 9th and also played for the team. The Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashower.
Thanks, John. And in other sports news, looks like Wall Street's running up the score when it comes to sports betting. Morgan Stanley predicts the U.S. market will generate almost $7 billion in annual revenue within 5 years. That's about 8 times what it generated this year and $2 billion more than estimates Morgan Stanley issued less than a year ago. So far, 14 states have legalized sports betting. Many others are considering it. S&P futures are higher by almost 7 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Decide when things
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy, and few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population. And how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers? Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management.
I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, like in-borough market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
It's another Tuesday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea.
In a very uneventful way. Sooner or later, the public will forget.
Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Probably the better part of 2 years. So
in cinemas November 15th. So you're going to build a car to beat Ferrari with a Ford. Correct. Get ready for Le Mans 66. I hate guys like us because we're different. Starring Matt Damon and Christian Bale. What are they doing? Making your car go faster. Based on the incredible true story of Ford versus Ferrari.
No, I thought the whole point was to win the damned race.
Le Mans 66. In cinemas and IMAX November 15th.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Taylor Briggs.
A C-suite shakeup at the top of McDonald's has investors wondering how it will affect the company's strategy, which was poised to rely heavily on technology. From Uber Eats to kiosks and stores, the ousted CEO, Steve Easterbrook, had a distinct vision for the fast food giant, and he dedicated a good chunk of investment to innovation. Now, it will be up to Chris Kempinski to keep tabs on modernization efforts at the chain's 38,000 restaurants. With more is Morningstar consumer equity strategist RJ Hodaby. Given that we're a technology show really focused on those key innovations that McDonald's really had made, how much of the growth in the last few years and the outperformance of the stock really hinged on those investments in technology?
I'd say it was a major driver of it. I wouldn't say it was completely dependent on technology, but it certainly was a major part of the company's growth in the last couple of years. I think you have to factor in things like menu simplification and putting the refranchising, so putting company-owned stores in the hands of franchisees. But if you take a look at kind of the velocity drivers, the things that really sped up growth, things like the kiosks within the stores, delivery, mobile order, those were very important. So I'd say it was probably the top contributor, but certainly played a part of a broader mosaic.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:17 on Wall Street, and Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at IBKR.com/CME Mini. Now let's check the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. China wants the US to roll back tariffs before signing a partial trade deal. That's according to sources who say Beijing's looking to roll back some $360 billion of goods. The SEC is giving Wall Street a longer reprieve in Europe's MiFID II rules. US brokerages will have 3 more years to comply with the new regulations. The CEO of Goldman Sachs says US markets are more focused on the election than President Trump's impeachment. David Solomon also tells Bloomberg he'd be surprised if the Fed cut rates again. And OPEC is slashing estimates for oil demand. The group predicts a slide of about 7% over the next 4 years. For all the news you need to start your
Fly from
day,
London
check out
Gatwick to
Daybreak on your
Cancun
mobile
with
phone on the
British
Bloomberg
Airways
Anywhere app.
from £275
And
each
thank
way.
you. S&P
based on
futures are up
return
7
fare.
points this
Don't
morning.
miss
Dow
out.
futures up
Book by
71,
November the
Nasdaq
12th
futures
at
up 22, the DAX in
BA.com/winter
Germany's
sun with
little
British
changed at less than a tenth of a percent now. 10-year Treasury down 9/30 seconds, yield 1.81%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.8% or 44 cents at 56.97 a barrel, and COMEX gold down 1/3% or $4.80 at 15.0630 an ounce. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, it is Election Day. President Trump paid a visit to Lexington, Kentucky last night. The campaign for Republican incumbent Governor Matt Bevin, Democratic challenger Andy Beshear made his final campaign stop in his hometown of Louisville, where he called for change. Transcripts from the depositions of 2 diplomats dealing with U.S. relations with Ukraine are expected to be released today by the House Impeachment Inquiry. Monday Night Football, the Giants lost to the Cowboys 37-18. In the NBA, the Nets won along with the Warriors. In the NHL, the Rangers lost, the Bruins won. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air, and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We're coming up to 6:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. We want to take a close look at the earnings from Uber this morning. Shares of the ride-hailing company are down nearly 6.4% following mixed results from the company. For more, we're joined by Mandeep Singh, Senior Technology Analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. So what's got investors spooked this morning, Mandeep?
Well, essentially, it was a slowdown in the user growth. So for any internet company, investors care about user growth. In case of Uber, they already have a user base of over 100 million, but the growth seems to be slowing down, and the reason seems to be obvious that Uber wants to focus on its path to profitability and not driving user growth at all costs using subsidies, which is what has made it hard for them to get home
or on the go. But in that drive to profitability, is there a risk from the company that it could be spreading itself too thin when it looks to spread out into ventures beyond ride-hailing, like Uber Eats, things like that?
Follow, tune in on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports. Have, a global footprint. They have a brand. They are present in almost every market. Yes, they have seeded certain markets, but they were unprofitable to begin with. And our view is Uber may exit even some more markets where they will find that the path to profitability is very far out. So I think they're at a point where they probably will focus more on the U.S., Canada, and Europe markets, probably exit a few more of the Asia-Pac markets, given, the just unit economics don't work out very well for them.
So the CEO of Uber, Derek Khosrowshahi, is saying that he can make Uber profitable by 2021, less than 2 years from now. Is he right?
Based on what we have seen so far with Lyft, and when you look at their sales and marketing expenses, they brought it down from 30% of revenue to 15%. If Uber were to do the same, they will become profitable. Right now, Uber's sales and marketing expenses are close to 30% of their revenue. They're spending over $1 billion in sales and marketing expenses every quarter. If they were to bring it down to the same ratio as Lyft did in the last quarter, they will become profitable. So I think, yes, they can become profitable. It will come at the expense of top-line growth, but I think investors, at this point, they care about the profitability of this company, so they won't mind that.
So you're looking then for Khosrowshahi to make even more cuts than he's already committed to?
Absolutely, and in fact, they did some job cuts within marketing, within a few other divisions on the administrative side. So this company, I think, is going to get leaner, especially in the near term, and they're going to focus everything around, achieving that 2021 goal of being EBITDA positive.
How well poised is Uber toward the possibility of yet more regulatory oversight, things like protecting the rights of the drivers who work as contractors for this company?
So
promise?
I think something that they don't have control upon.
Just ask the celebrity designer.
Again, it could
she recently called
vary
out the
by
company
city.
on Instagram for selling a fake
yes, they
version
are
of her
fighting the
shoe.
AB5 law in California.
And hundreds of
but
fired
guess
up
what?
customers,
U.S.
like
is the
this
most
one,
profitable
posting
market.
on YouTube.
So they have no choice but to work with the regulators,
After speaking with
especially
nearly
in
3
large
dozen
cities,
former
and
employees
they will
and
find a
obtaining
way.
these
That may
internal
mean,
company documents,
raising the
our
hourly wages
investigation
a bit,
uncovered
which
a different
implies
reality
a hit,
inside
on
the
the
real
EBITDA
real.
line. But they have multiple levers.
Did you
and
actually see
again,
fakes
regulators
make
have
their
tried
way
to
onto
ban
the site
Uber in certain
for sale?
cities, and that's not what the
Shanice
consumers
Parchment was a
want. So
copywriter for
my
nearly
feeling
3.5
is they're
years
going
at
to work with the
Real Real's
regulators.
warehouse in Secaucus, New
It's going to
Jersey.
employ
But
making
says
some
the team
changes,
she
in
managed
terms of
did
how they
more
treat the
than just
drivers
write
and
about designer
even raising
goods.
hourly
They
wages, but they should be
authenticated
able to
them
work
too.
their
Do
way
you think
around.
they had enough
Mandeep
training
Singh,
to
thanks for this.
authenticate
Much
these
appreciated.
luxury
Mandeep
bags?
Singh is a senior technology analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence,
And the
providing
Real
unique
Real's,
real-time
quote,
research and
expert behind
context on
every
industries,
item.
all the market and government facts that impact business. Terminal customers can
Greta
access
Stair
this
worked
function
as a
at
luxury manager for the
BIGO. And
Real
as
Real
we
in Los
continue to
Angeles,
watch shares of
spending
Uber
most
in the
days with
pre-market, they are
consignors.
under
But says
pressure
a
this morning,
2015
down
company
nearly
tour of the warehouse in New Jersey
6.3%. As
left her
for the broader
questioning
market,
the business.
it is poised for potentially yet more records on positive signs for U.S.-China Phase 1 trade deal. S&P futures are higher by 6.5 points. Dow futures a gain of 68, and NASDAQ futures are higher by 22 points. The 10-year's down 9/30 seconds, yield 1.80%. Two-year Treasury yield 1.59%.
Graham
And you're listening to
has been the chief
Bloomberg
authenticator
Daybreak.
and very public face of the Real.
This is truly
This
amazing.
is a Bloomberg Market
what
Minute.
exactly
The
did
early
his team
indicators are
authenticate?
pointing to more
CNBC
gains on
obtained
Wall
this
Street at the
internal chart
open,
from
with the major
2018 sent out to
benchmarks all
copywriters,
starting out at
spelling
morning
out
record
what was
highs
to be
today.
processed by the
Investors
authentication
continue to
team
watch for
and
more
what
progress on a
copywriters
Phase
were to
1
handle.
U.S.-China trade
Based on
deal.
this,
Today we'll
anything
get some
Chanel
economic
went to the
data as well,
authentication
including
team.
a look at
But
the
Fendi
wide-ranging
bags,
services part of the U.S.
Prada
economy,
bags,
which
only
makes
leather.
up the bulk of
And
economic
Gucci belts and
activity.
shoes,
China is
both
seeking the
nose.
rollback of U.S.
According to a
tariffs on as much as
2015 World
$360
Customs
billion of
Organization
Chinese
report,
imports
some of the
before
most
President Xi
counterfeited brands
Jinping
in the
agrees to
world
go to the
include
U.S. to
Chanel
sign a partial
and
trade
Gucci.
deal with President Donald Trump, and that is according to people familiar with the situation. Uber is down before the opening bell.
Top
Uber beat estimates for
authenticators are
quarterly
trained to
revenue
spot
and its
tiny
loss in the
details in
latest
designer
quarter, but
bags,
two things
like the
watched
number of
closely
stitches
by
per
Wall Street
panel in Chanel's
showed
iconic
lackluster
quilting
gains,
pattern.
and those are
Chanel
monthly
is
active
suing the
users
Real,
and
claiming the
bookings.
company sold
S&P
counterfeit
futures
bags
up
on the
5.
site.
Gina
The
Cervetti,
Real
Bloomberg
says the
Radio.
suit amounts to harassing with meritless
Imagine being
litigation,
denied an
and the
apartment
case
because
is
of your
pending.
religion, or your
According to
race,
Parchment,
or because
when
you have children,
fakes
or
and
disability.
mistakes were discovered on the site, they were added
Yes,
to a
but
list
who has
to be
the power to
corrected.
stop
How many of
this?
these corrections were happening every day?
Each of us has the power.
Did
The law
mistakes
is on
happen?
your side.
Absolutely.
It's illegal for
Emily
landlords to
Fogg
discriminate
worked as a
because of race,
copywriter at the
color,
Secaucus warehouse
religion,
for more than a
sex,
year and says
national
she was
origin,
also tasked
disability,
with
or familial
authentication.
status.
And I sort of had an idea.
If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it.
Do you think you have
Fair
enough
housing is your
training
right.
to know
Use
what's
it.
real and what's
To learn
fake
more,
in every
visit
category?
HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777.
So what is the real priority?
A public service message from HUD in partnership with the
This
National
internal
Fair Housing
document lists a
Alliance.
specific daily quota for 2018 and 19. It's another Tuesday saying morning. Copywriters Yet are another expected to cold day. consistently reach their So daily ditch quota. the British winter and chase the sun copywriters are across the subject globe to with disciplinary British Airways action. from
The
London
way that we were
Gatwick.
expected
Experience
to work
Mexican
was
culture
like a machine.
and
From Julie
relax by the
herself,
Caribbean
that we
Sea.
had to get in these numbers by the end of every month in order to please the
Fly
investors.
from London Gatwick
Stair
to
says she
Cancun with
left
British
after 3
Airways
years
from
to work for a
£275
The
each
Real
way
Real
based
sued
on
her
a return
taking
of
its
clients,
Don't
which
miss out.
she denied.
Book by November the
The suit
12th
was
at
eventually settled.
ba.com/winter
We
sun
sifted
with British
through close
Airways.
to 1,400
Incredible
reviews
is
of the
within
Real
reach.
Real
Booking
online
fees
Terms and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Select complaints in March.
Include fakes, damage,
Whatever
and
job
customer
you're searching
service.
for,
Everything
you
we
can find it
carry
on LinkedIn.
is real,
First
is
jobs,
so important to
flexible
us, we
jobs,
put it
work
in
from
our
home
name.
on a
But
Friday
this
jobs,
big name is now
advertising
gone.
jobs, accounting
Chief
jobs,
Authenticator
HR,
Graham
PR, even
Wetzbarger.
ER jobs,
Velcro,
Soho jobs,
love
shortage
that.
jobs.
He tells
Keep me
CNBC,
away from the
I won't
centralized
discuss
jobs,
why I left the
banking
company.
jobs, building
When
jobs,
asked about his
never ever
departure after
boring
nearly
jobs.
7 years, he denies it was related to our story. And when it comes to copywriters authenticating items, Wetbarger would not comment. The company declined our repeated requests to go on camera, instead sending this statement saying in part, "We stand behind our authentication process and will always work with our customers to make things right. And if there is a question about the authenticity of an item purchased from the real, we refund the purchase price upon return." The company refused to provide any more details, only saying that this is our final statement.
Join us today at blood.co.uk.
And late yesterday on the earnings call, the CEO
It's hard to find a children's gift which doesn't have a short shelf life. They'll eat all the chocolates in 5 minutes, finish their video games by the end of the week, and grow out of their trainers before you know it. So instead of buying them something just for Christmas, buy them something that's for life. Premium bonds from NS&I. Every month they'll have the chance to win cash prizes. And now you can buy premium bonds for any child. Start their savings journey from just £25. Search Gift Premium Bonds to find out more.
Looking very, expert in this and authentic.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality, I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you can beat my current premium by up to 10%?
I go into a reputable place, a Birdmore, for, I don't know,
it's the dog, isn't
Marcus.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
There's a 0%.
This is the sound of festive fun in London.
Things new you don't know.
Well,
you want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are higher this morning as we get more signs that U.S. and China could be closer to a deal. China is asking the White House to roll back some tariffs as part of a Phase 1 agreement. Sources tell us Beijing wants rollbacks on as much as $360 billion of Chinese goods. Here with more is Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Beijing.
These two sides are moving closer, it seems, to getting this deal locked down. And of course, any trip to the U.S. wouldn't be risk-free for President Xi, which is maybe why we're now hearing that the U.S. is considering removing these tariffs, heading into potentially a President Xi and President Trump meeting to sign off on Phase 1 at one of these states in the U.S. at some point in November.
While China is asking for a rollback on tariffs, there's no word yet on a decision from the White House.
President Xi Jinping, meanwhile, is touting China's commitment to the global trading order. At a keynote speech in Shanghai, the Chinese president said he will lower tariffs and institutional transaction costs.
On the energy front, OPEC's annual World Oil Report is painting a grim picture for the group. OPEC projects demand for its oil declining and its share of world markets shrinking as U.S. shale floods the market. Right now, Brent is trading at $62.70 a barrel. That's down 0.9%. West Texas Intermediate, and that's up rather 0.9%. West Texas Intermediate is higher as well, up 0.7% at $56.94.
All right, turning to earnings now. Shares of Uber Technologies are down 6.3% in early trading after results that fell flat with investors. Here with details is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Uber improved its loss forecast for the year, but disappointed investors on some closely watched financial measures. Gross bookings, food delivery, and monthly active users were all below analyst estimates for the third quarter. The results come as the San Francisco-based company seeks to reassure investors it can evolve from a simple ride-hailing service to a global, all-in-one transportation platform. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. Shares of Shake Shack are down nearly 17.5% in early trading. Burger chain posted comp sales for the third quarter that missed estimates, and it lowered its guidance for the year.
Morning.
And futures are higher with S&P futures up 5 points, Dow futures up 60, NASDAQ futures up 19, the DAX in Germany little change now, it's given up its gains. 10-year Treasury down 10/30 seconds, the yield 1.81%, and the yield on the 2-year is at 1.59%. COMEX gold is down 0.3%, down $4.30 at $15.06.80 an ounce. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Incredible is within reach.
All right, thank you, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by the New York Community Trust, a public charity working with generous New Yorkers to make an impact on the issues they care about. To set up your fund through the New York Community Trust, visit nycommunitytrust.org. Now here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Nathan. House Democrats say more transcripts of the closed-door testimony in the impeachment inquiry will be released today. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter reports.
The first of the releases was Marie Yovanovitch, who said she felt threatened by the president, who said she was going to go through some things. She said she disagreed with the increasing pressure put on Ukraine to cooperate in gathering information. Judiciary Chair Adam Schiff.
It is someone who also is one of the first witnesses to this irregular back channel that the president established with Rudy Giuliani.
And he says the no-shows this week from the Trump administration will hurt the president in the long run.
This will be further evidence of an effort by the administration to obstruct the lawful and constitutional duties of Congress.
Republicans, Congressman Jim Jordan.
Game-winning shots and walk-off homers. Follow tune in on social media to discover the latest
in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Voters in 4 states will cast ballots today in elections that's considered as a snapshot of the national mood amid impeachment proceedings and a crowded Democratic presidential primary. President Trump campaigned in Mississippi and Kentucky in the hopes of avoiding Democratic upset in governor's races. The president in Lexington.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this. A digital audio file available on the internet, typically as a series, which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast
silence
is this.
you online,
with David Green,
confiscate
up first from NPR News. And
your guns.
Like this.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Virginia Democrats are hoping to take control of the state legislature. Legislative seats are also on the ballot in New Jersey. One issue voters in Jersey City will face is whether to curb short-term rentals like Airbnbs. In New York City is the Office of Public Advocate, now held by Democrat Jumaane Williams. He faces Republican City Council member Joseph Borelli and Libertarian Devin Bolkine. Voters in Queens will choose a new district attorney to replace long-serving district attorney Richard Brown, who died in May. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Michael, thank you. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashow.
Nathan, the losses keep piling up for the Giants. Their record of the last 3 seasons now 10-31, 5-16 at home. Did some good things last night. Daniel Jones, 54-yard rushing. He hooked up with Saquon Barkley on a 65-yard pass play. Golden Tate made a sensational one-handed catch. Giants had a 12-3 lead, but 3 turnovers, some costly penalties, too many times settling for a field goal. Dallas pulled away, won 37-18 over Pat Shurmur's Giants.
Also, the big event of the morning, our exclusive interview with Boeing's chairman, David Calhoun, coming up at 7:30 a.m. Eastern.
Running the football.
Shares of Shake Shack are under pressure, falling more than 15% after third quarter results. Earnings beat expectations, but the same-store sales, the growth there,
all the things you can't do in a
rate
game
expected to come in ahead of its guidance.
So here we go now, Sunday with the Giants against the Jets. The Nets gave up 48 points in the third quarter, but got 39 from Kyrie Irving. They beat the Pelicans in Brooklyn 135-125. Rangers lost to Ottawa 6-2. There's college hoops at the Garden tonight. Doubleheader involving the top 4 ranked teams in the nation. The Mets hiring of Carlos Beltran continues the trend all around baseball, hiring a young manager without any previous managerial experience. The GM is Brody Van Wagenen.
Carlos's hiring is a signal and an affirmation that is clear and loud to this organization's core tenets of being a players-first organization. We're players first here. Carlos Beltran will be a players manager.
Jacob deGrom won the Cy Young Award last year. He's a finalist again. Pete Alonso, finalist, heavy favorite to win Win Rookie of the Year. Aaron Boone, a finalist for American League Manager of the Year. Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. John Station.
Okay, John, thank you. And coming up today, we get data on America's service industries when the Institute of Supply Management issues its non-manufacturing index for October. Here with more is Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
In September, the ISM non-manufacturing index fell to 52.6, the slowest growth pace in 3 years. Orders and business activity slowed while employment moderated. Today's agenda also features data on trade and job openings. Preliminary data on September merchandise trade showed exports and imports declined to the lowest in more than a year. Job openings, meantime, dropped in the prior report covering August, also to the lowest in more than a year. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. It's coming up to 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following is an editorial from Bloomberg Opinion.
Europe's green parties are having the best kind of midlife crisis. Born in the counterculture of the 1970s, their movement is entering not only middle age, but also the hallways of power. In Austria, the Greens could soon become junior partners in the national government. In Germany, they've been rising in the polls since 2017 and are emerging as strong runners-up to the prevailing center-right bloc. They already have sway over a majority in the upper house of parliament. Having grown big, though, the Greens must now grow up. That means overcoming the false markets versus the environment dichotomy. Instead of bad-mouthing business, for example, far better to put a price on carbon and let the markets adjust to it. One of today's big questions is how to reconcile the economy with ecology. By embracing markets and capitalism, but updating both for the global struggle against climate change, green parties could lead the way. This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Opinion editorial board. I'm David Shipley. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to bloomberg.com/opinion.
British Airways,
OPI and go on the Bloomberg terminal. This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion editorials every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPI and go. 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
For years, some of the world's brightest scientists have called President Trump a dim bulb when it comes to the urgent need to do something about climate change. Then in September, Trump said the dim bulbs we need to do something about are those expensive LEDs.
Number one to me, most importantly, the light's no good. I always look orange. To do some more shopping. Search Hive
and so do you.
Hive services are
the light is the worst. It's no laughing matter for environmental groups. 15 states and the cities of New York and Washington, D.C., they're now suing to block the rollback of energy use requirements. Truth is, the Obama-era rule saves consumers billions in energy costs and avoids millions of tons of carbon emissions. The Energy Department contends Americans will be free to buy the lamps they desire, choice that Trump alluded to.
We're also going to sell incandescent bulbs, and people are so happy about it. It's really been pretty amazing.
National Research and Defense Council says it's also pretty illegal to backtrack on energy efficiency standards. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Okay, Bob, thank you. We're looking at green on the screen for equity markets this morning on signs the U.S. and China are edging closer to a Phase 1 trade deal. S&P futures higher by 5.5 points. Dow futures up 58. NASDAQ futures a gain of 20.5 points. The 10-year is down 10/30 seconds. Yield 1.81%. 2-year Treasury yield 1.59%. And the offshore yuan strengthening past 7 per dollar at 6.9965.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
For the 6th straight time, we think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners These are the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their one side of the brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Talked about how his ability to
It's another
make better
Tuesday
returns
morning.
or worse returns has
Yet
changed.
another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal blue sea.
There are patterns in the market that we humans don't really pick up on.
Fly from London Gatwick to the Maldives with British Airways from £300 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Then the nature of the market could change.
This week's On the Media.
We really need to start framing this differently.
The way we report the story of the California wildfires,
That's what I read.
blaming the power company, obscures the underlying structural problem.
I despair that our contemporary politics can in any way deal with the challenge that this century presents us.
This week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long. This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
In the future, upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN Radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying it today.
That's okay, but if you worry about
a lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Of being able to network of news and financial information 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
How that can't last, but it can last.
Potentially bad news for the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong as China's ruling Communist Party leadership has issued a statement saying they will establish, quote, an enforcement mechanism to safeguard national security in Hong Kong. And China will also, quote, perfect the system under which the party has full jurisdictional power over Hong Kong. The public will get a chance today to begin seeing impeachment inquiry depositions taken in recent weeks behind closed doors, as we hear from Suzanne Malveaux.
House Democrats releasing these transcripts, hundreds and hundreds of pages, and if you go through it, you get a chance to see Republicans as well as Democrats participating in this process, questioning these witnesses, and piecing together this story as this process becomes public.
State elections today, choosing governors in Mississippi and Kentucky and legislative seats in Virginia and New Jersey. Stock futures this morning are continuing with moderate gains following the record-setting gains made across the boards yesterday on Wall Street. I'm Michael Toscano.
If you're at the top of your profession, you're listening. Are those gains all going to the elite? Bloomberg Surveillance.
Does it spread beyond manufacturing?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And up here in Moscow, it is 6:46. 7 on Wall Street. Futures are higher this morning. Let's go to the first word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. That's right. U.S. futures are climbing right now. Dow futures up 65 points. S&P's gained 6, and NASDAQ futures rise by 20. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.81%. Gold is down 5, and Japan rose 1.8% overnight. European markets are quiet this morning. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, trade balance at 9:45. Market U.S. services and composite PMIs, and at 10 o'clock, the ISM non-manufacturing index. After the bell last night, Uber reported disappointing user growth. Shake Shack reported lower 2019 comp sales